Chapter 337. Leia. Accompanied by an inexplicable roar, a black creature with black smoke all over its body charged out of nowhere. The opponent was undoubtedly a servant. Wuming could feel it at such a close distance, and it seemed to be a berserker. What's going on? Isn't Berserker Hercules? Wuming frowned. Later, Wuming observed that berserkers seemed to rush out from the collapsed Winterwood Hotel, which meant that the opponent was previously under the hotel. The opponent's whole body was black, and he could tell that it was an African. Wuming thought so. However, it was lucky. Leia. The black mass roared and rushed toward Wuming. That's right, it rushed toward Wuming, ignoring Olga Marie. Wuming could feel that the opponent was targeting him. Olga, hide, it's a servant. Wuming said seriously to Olga Marie behind him. Olga Marie quickly found a ruin to hide. Berserker picked up a telephone pole from the side of the road, jumped up and slammed it toward Wuming. Boom! The ground was directly smashed, and large pieces of stone flew up. Whoa whoa! Olga Marie covered her head and hid behind the ruins, whimpering. Really, what the hell did you do, assassin? Wuming fell behind Berserker, so the attack naturally didn't hit Wuming. It's not my fault, this guy came to me. Wuming shrugged. Leia. Berserker roared and once again raised the blackened telephone pole and smashed it toward Wuming. Boom! The ground was smashed again. This guy's agility is at least A rank. Wuming frowned. Wuming almost couldn't dodge the attack. But I'm an assassin. If you expect an assassin to fight a berserker, perhaps only the ancestor of the assassin, the legendary First Hassan, could do that. If that's the case. Wuming narrowed his eyes. Leia. Berserker madly rushed toward Wuming. With Berserker's current speed, Wuming was in danger. The dark mist city, along with Wuming's noble phantasm, countless smoke exploded and engulfed Berserker, forcing Berserker was forced to stop. The smoke enveloped an area of 100 meters with Wuming as the center. Then, the smoke disappeared, revealing Wuming's figure and Berserker's disappearance. Olga Marie put out her head when there was no more noise. Did you kill that berserker? Olga Marie was in disbelief. The smoke also covered her, so Olga Marie couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything clearly, so she didn't know what happened. Of course not, I just trapped that berserker in an enchantment. Let's go, he'll come out soon. That's right, Jack the Ripper's enchantment, the mist. It was the spirit storm that recreated London in the 19th century. It was also the reason why Jack the Ripper could spread fog and use fog. Enchantment. Enchantment. Olga Marie was obviously shocked. After all, for a magician, an enchantment was the highest level of magic. Don't be so surprised. My enchantment is cursed, it's not a good thing. Wuming shook his head, then took the lead and began to move toward the stronghold. After that, Olga Marie didn't ask any more questions. After all, Olga Marie was just a fake master who provided magic, so she couldn't see the attributes of the servant. Well, my situation is a bit complicated, I can't explain it in a short time. You can call me Jack or Assassin, after all, we're just partners. Wuming said at that time. Jack. Assassin. Olga Marie thought carefully. Hey. If you don't follow me, I'm leaving. Wait a minute. After walking for a while, Olga Marie really couldn't walk anymore, so Wuming took Olga Marie to a store to settle down. Although most of the buildings were destroyed and burned, there were still some buildings that weren't completely destroyed. Like this small store, there were some edible food in it. Here. Wuming said, throwing a bread to Olga Marie. This is. Olga Marie looked at the old goods, slightly nostalgic. It's still in the packaging, it's still edible. Wuming continued to organize the edible food, one by one, putting it into the black ripple. Olga Marie ate in small bites, looking at Wuming's black ripple. Is this an independent space? Olga Marie asked. Yes, because I cheated a little, I let the assassin rank have the noble phantoms of other ranks. Wuming smiled a little awkwardly. Wait, you can cheat. Olga Marie heard that for the first time, she couldn't stay calm. Didn't I say, after all, I'm special? Wuming just said to Olga Marie's surprise. Then, after organizing the edible food, Wuming walked to the door. I'll go out and check the situation, you stay here and don't run around. Wuming said. What? You make it sound like I like to run around. Olga Marie retorted Wuming, but Wuming just pretended not to hear. I also need to clear my mind, you should go. Olga Marie said in disgust. Wuming shrugged and didn't say anything. Wuming released his mana, propelling himself to fly up and directly arrived at the roof of a tall building. From the height of this building, he could almost overlook the entire Winterwood City. Standing on the roof, Wuming looked at Winterwood City. He could vaguely see that there were battles in Winterwood City, and there were more than one. There weren't many battles that could cause large-scale explosions, and Wuming could vaguely sense a small battle. But, it's a bit too much. Wuming said in detail. What Wuming was referring to was naturally the battles in those few places. Assuming that in addition to Silent Noise and Berserker just now, there were still 7 servants, and those large-scale and small-scale battles just now were more than 3 places. It's impossible that there were a few servants who had nothing to do and attacked by themselves. Combined with the extra Berserker, plus Lev's trick on the Holy Grail before Wuming was sent flying, Wuming almost guessed it. The number of servants increased. Is it to chase me or something else? Wuming thought. At this time, Wuming sensed that several servants were coming this way. If these servants didn't change their direction, there was no doubt that they would encounter Olga Marie. The perception of servants was much stronger than humans, and Olga Marie couldn't hide under the eyes of servants. But the servants coming this way just proved Wuming's conjecture, the number of servants increased. Swish! Wuming instantly disappeared from the roof. Chapter 338. On the abandoned and burning street, 2 figures were running. One of the figures was wearing a rather revealing purple tights, and some parts of the body were covered with armor. One of the figures was holding a 2-meter-high shield with a cross on the outside, and the other hand was holding a girl. Needless to say, she was a servant. The girl had short, orange-red hair that was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a simple white top with black straps around her chest and abdomen. There was a black belt around her waist. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings, and white boots. Although it looked like work clothes from somewhere, it looked extremely beautiful on the girl. The girl with short orange hair had 3 red marks on the back of her right hand, which formed a shield. Obviously, she was the master of the girl in purple tights. Next to the 2, a girl in a cloak was carrying a scythe and holding a little girl with black hair in her arms. If Wuming was here, he would know that she was one of the 7 servants on the beach. She used a scythe as a weapon, Lancer of the Tong family. Needless to say, the little girl with short black hair in her arms was the master of Lancer. The 3 petal-like marks on the back of her right hand were the best proof. Ma. Matthew, are you okay? The girl with short orange hair asked with concern. She seemed to feel guilty for letting the younger generation carry her. It's okay, Senpai. I am Senpai's servant, and Senpai is my master. The girl named Matthew said and smiled at her master. They're coming. Lancer, who was beside the 2 of them, finished speaking. Suddenly, a sharp arrow was shot towards them. Mashu quickly stopped and raised her shield to block the sharp heart-shaped arrows. Bang! 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 A few steel-like collision sounds came, and Matthew, who was holding the shield, was pushed back a few steps by the huge impact. "Are you okay, Matthew?" the orange-haired girl asked worriedly, her words vaguely hinting that she was blaming herself for not being able to help. "It's okay, senpai. Please be careful, the opponent is a very powerful servant." Although it was very difficult to resist the attack, Mashu still smiled and said to her master who was protecting her, "Matthew is right. Chaldea's instrument shows that there are two servants comparable to gods. No, there is no doubt that they are gods near you. Be careful, Matthew, Tachika." A male voice came from a device on the wrist of the girl with short orange hair who seemed to be called Rika. Although the voice sounded rather unreliable, cough cough, there was no doubt that he was right. Then, Matthew said to Lancer, "Miss Anna, please help us. I don't want senpai to leave this place." Matthew and Tachika had seen Anna's ability. For many skeleton soldiers, Anna just waved her sickle and killed all the skeleton soldiers. She was much more powerful than Matthew. The girl called Anna couldn't help but look at her little master. Compared to Anna, she hoped that these people could call her Lancer. Also, if her little master didn't always call Anna sister, Matthew and others wouldn't know that she was called Anna. Sister Anna. Sakura Madu looked at Anna. But Anna was still hesitant, because the enemy this time was, "What's wrong, my lovely sister? Are you afraid to attack your own sister?" A beautiful voice came from behind them. Everyone looked at the newcomer in panic because they didn't notice her presence until she spoke. But it was obvious that she had been standing there for a long time. "That's right, my lovely sister, are you afraid to attack your own sister?" However, at this time, Matthew and others also heard a beautiful voice in front of them. Everyone looked to the front again, and a gorgeous purple-haired girl with two ponytails appeared in front of them. She was dressed almost exactly the same as the one behind them. The only difference between the two was their clothes and weapons. The girl who came from behind didn't have any weapons in her hands. She only had a gauntlet that protected the back of her hands. Moreover, it was more appropriate to call it an ornament than a gauntlet. It made her hands look more tempting. The girl's clothes were similar to a royal shawl and a low-cut princess dress with a long transparent hem that covered her beautiful legs. A few transparent scarves were wrapped around the girl's body, making her look particularly charming. The girl who came from the front held a small bow made of gold in her hand, but there were no arrows. From this, it could be seen that the heart-shaped arrows just now were shot by this girl. The girl didn't have gauntlets on her hands, but a bracelet made of beautiful strings of beads, which made her small hands even more beautiful. In terms of clothes, the girl's clothes were similar to the clothes of the Greek girl next door. It was just a short skirt that went up to the knees, and there was a bow in front of the chest. Other than that, the two girls looked exactly the same, and even their temperament was exactly the same. They were like the goddess of love, full of charm, and couldn't help but want to surrender. Fortunately, Matthew and others were all women, and more or less resisted the two gods. If they were men, they would probably be lying on the ground licking the toes of the goddess. "Sister." Anna couldn't help but whisper. The three people beside Anna heard what Anna said and were shocked. "Sister." Matthew looked at Anna in disbelief. "So, Anna, you are also a god." Tachika looked at Anna in surprise. Anna only made a soft sound and did not say anything else. "How sad, my sister, you haven't told them your real name yet." The girl in the back smiled and looked at Anna with a light tone. "Your master looks too young, and it seems that she can't use the ability of a master." The girl in front covered her mouth and laughed. "So, what should we do now, sister? Will you die with your companions, or rise up and resist us?" The two girls finished each other's words as if they were the same person. "Sister." Perhaps, I was summoned to this era to kill you again. Anna put Sakura Midu down, and Sakura Midu ran into Tachika's arms obediently. Then, Anna picked up the scythe from behind and stood back to back with Matthew, protecting their master behind them. Seeing the scythe pointed at her, the girl in the back smiled happily and painfully. My poor sister, she has to experience the pain of killing her family again. The girl in front was also the same. The two were happy that Anna didn't have to die, but they were sad that their sister had to bear the pain of killing her family. Since that's the case, I'll end all of you. Suddenly, a ghostly voice came out of nowhere. Mother of Disintegration. Chapter 339. Maria Ripper. After the activation of the relic's true name, a thick fog engulfed everyone. The thick fog reduced everyone's visibility to less than 5 meters. Even Anna's two sisters could barely see each other. The girl behind Gadotsi and the rest sensed the danger as they were of the same rank. She quickly warned her sisters. You O'Reilly. Be careful. However, sigh. The girl named O'Reilly in front of Gadotsi and the rest was a little dazed as she let out a doubtful voice. A silhouette appeared behind her. It was a black leather windbreaker, a black top hat, and black leather shoes. Everything was black except for the 2 red glows where his eyes were. It was extremely horrifying. What a pity, Gorgon's goddess. You're really unlucky, said the black silhouette. After all, I exist for women. The black silhouette revealed his face. It was Wuming. After Wuming finished speaking, O'Reilly's vision turned black and she fell. Sister. Anna shouted in worry. She raised her scythe and looked at Wuming with hostility. Wuming hugged the girl who fell and looked at everyone with a smile. Ignoring Anna who was looking at him with hostility, Wuming looked at the goddess behind Gadotsi and the rest. Then, there's only you, goddess Stheno. Stheno. Matthew said in surprise. He was obviously shocked by the name. Stheno frowned and immediately turned around to leave. Although she was a goddess, Stheno knew that she did not have much combat power. The reason why the 2 servants, Anna and Matthew, were forced to flee with their masters was that Matthew was too weak, and Anna did not want to fight with her 2 sisters, which led to the scene where the 4 of them were besieged by Stheno and O'Reilly. Moreover, when Anna picked up her scythe and was ready to fight, Stheno and O'Reilly were sad that their sister was going to kill her sister again. The 2 of them knew that if their younger sister were to fight, the 2 of them would not be a match at all. Moreover, in mythology, Stheno and O'Reilly were defined as goddesses who had no combat power at all. If they did not appear in the world as servants, Stheno and her sister O'Reilly would not have any combat power at all. Seeing that Stheno had escaped, Wuming did not rush to chase after her. Instead, he threw O'Reilly in his arms to Anna. Although Anna was somewhat hostile to Wuming, she would still choose to catch her sister's corpse, even if it was a conspiracy. Let's leave for a while, said Wuming, turning into smoke and disappearing in front of everyone. Anna, who was holding her sister's corpse, Gadotsi, Matthew, and Sakura Midu were left in a daze. Wuming chased after Stheno at a leisurely pace. It was not because he was arrogant but because Stheno was now in Wuming's enchantment. That's right. The moment Wuming activated his noble phantasm, he also activated his enchantment, the mist. If Gadotsi and the others were paying attention, they would realize that the environment around them had changed. Besides, the device on Gadotsi's wrist no longer emitted any sound because the mist released by Wuming interfered with the mana connection. Moreover, Wuming had the ability to turn into mist in his enchantment and appear anywhere in an instant, so Wuming was not in a hurry to catch up with Stheno. Sensing the existence of the otherness in his enchantment, Wuming frowned. He hasn't come out yet. However, after sensing the distance between the 2 of them, Wuming did not bother about him anymore. Instead, he sensed Stheno's location. By the way, even if Stheno was an assassin and also had a level A+ aura concealment, he could not get rid of Wuming. The entire enchantment was filled with mist. As long as there was mist, Wuming could detect it. Therefore, Wuming had already discovered Stheno, who was hiding in the shadows of the alley ahead. After stopping, Wuming walked to the entrance of the alley slowly and looked at the shadows. "Do you want to play hide-and-seek, great goddess?" Wuming smiled as he walked into the alley. When he got close to Stheno, a charming voice was suddenly heard. "Smile of the goddess." Following the activation of the noble phantasm, Wuming stood there motionlessly as if he was frozen. Then, Stheno's figure appeared. "I thought you were a powerful hero, but I didn't expect you to be the same as the others." "A man is a man indeed," Stheno said slowly as if he had already won. Walking to Wuming, who was standing there in a daze, Stheno raised his head and looked at Wuming. "What beautiful eyes, what a handsome face." "What a pity," Stheno said as if she was intoxicated. None of the men who had been affected by her charm could survive. "To be able to attack us sisters, I thought you were really a man who wasn't tempted by beauty." Stheno smiled, then raised his hand and caressed Wuming's cheek. Suddenly, when Stheno touched Wuming's face, he seemed to have seen something rather shocking. Shock was written all over his face. Slap. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Stheno's arm. Then, a rather frivolous voice was heard. "It's not good to casually invade other people's privacy, great goddess." "What?" Stheno exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the man who grabbed his wrist without any trace of being affected by the charm, Stheno smiled bitterly. "I see. Was that all a disguise? What a cunning man." Wuming only maintained his smile and didn't explain anything. As for the appearance of being affected by the charm just now, that was an act by Wuming. As someone who had seen through Stheno and Euryale's true names, Wuming naturally wouldn't be so rash as to underestimate Stheno. Even if Wuming could take down Euryale without any difficulty, Wuming wouldn't think that Stheno was easy to deal with. After all, no matter how weak and useless the other party was, she was still a goddess. For example, just now, Stheno had only touched Wuming's cheek and seen some information about Wuming. In terms of skills, it should be similar to seeing through true names. As an existence on the same level as them, or even a higher level existence, Wuming said that there was no need to underestimate any god. Gods never lacked trump cards. Well, of course, if the difference in strength was too great, he could still underestimate them. Cough, cough. In short, because Wuming realized that the other party was a charming goddess, he originally wanted to use a world-class item to resist Wuming, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. After all, his hypostasis was very high, and he had proven before that he was immune to almost all mind control without a world-class item. Therefore, Wuming pretended to be charmed and grabbed Stheno when she approached Wuming. As for whether Stheno, who was caught by Wuming, would escape or not, Wuming already had a plan. Chapter 340. Wuming grabbed Stheno's hand, and his silver chain wrapped around it. Wuming had plenty of pirated Enkidu in his dimension artifact. Cough, cough, anyway, Stheno couldn't run away. Moreover, after Stheno saw what happened to Wuming, he gave up on the idea of running away. "Don't worry, sly man. I have no intention of running away, even if you did something terrible to my sister." With a smile on his face, Stheno calmly said something rather strange. "Although I know you're saying that I didn't kill Euryale, please don't be so strange." "Forget it." Wuming shrugged nonchalantly and let go of Stheno's hand. However, the Enkidu that was connected to Stheno's hand because of Wuming didn't unlock when Wuming let go of Stheno's hand. "What? You still don't trust me?" Stheno raised the Enkidu on his arm and said unhappily. "I'm a goddess. A goddess won't lie to a hero who has captured her. Steno narrowed his eyes and smiled at Wu Ming as if he was looking at a delightful toy. Forget about being a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I'm just an assassin, at least for now. Wu Ming shrugged. Wu Ming's last sentence was to tell Steno not to expose his identity. He just wanted to be a different kind of assassin. Oh, since the great hero says so, I'll just listen to you. Steno smiled at Wu Ming. Let's go. Your O'Reilly should be awake by now, right? Wu Ming grabbed Steno's hand and started walking towards where they came from. As expected of a brave warrior. You actually dared to hold the hand of a goddess. However, since you didn't do anything to O'Reilly, I will forgive your rudeness. Steno raised his neck like a proud princess. I feel like it's better to get rid of you now. On the way, Wu Ming began to ask Steno for information or to verify his speculation. After Wu Ming told Steno about his speculation that Lev had resummoned 7 servants, Steno nodded. As expected of you. That's right. The man in the green hat summoned 7 new servants, including me and O'Reilly. Steno walked elegantly as if Wu Ming didn't take the initiative to hold her hand, but she took the initiative to hold Steno's hand. Then, he began to introduce their lineup. I'm an assassin, O'Reilly is an archer, and Saber is a muscleman. I can tell he's a lecherous guy. His eyes lit up when he saw O'Reilly and me, and he even tried to flirt with us. Steno frowned. He was rather displeased. Steno knew how to talk up trides up knew how to flirt with. Castor looks like a mature old man. He doesn't talk much. Ryder is a red-haired muscular man. He seems to be a king, and he has some connection with Zeus. He's quite annoying. And the way Castor looks at Ryder is a bit weird. He's full of passion. Steno smiled mischievously. Wu Ming ignored her and continued to listen to Steno's introduction. Steno looked at Wu Ming, who didn't respond. He was not surprised and continued to talk. Berserker was a guy covered in black. I couldn't see his face clearly. However, this guy was always by the other Saber's side. You don't know how excited Berserker was at that time. It looked like he wanted to kill Saber. Wu Ming thought that the Berserker mentioned by Steno should be the black Berserker they met before, and the other Saber mentioned by Steno should be Artoria. Combined with what Steno said, Wu Ming now knew why Berserker came straight to him. I'm afraid that Berserker is a Knight of the Round Table, Wu Ming thought. Although Wu Ming didn't think that a Knight of the Round Table could become a Berserker, there were exceptions to everything. Like Mordred, with her obsession with Artoria, she was likely to become a Berserker. In the last Holy Grail War, although Mordred appeared as a Saber, her fighting style was as violent as a Berserker. But the Berserker who attacked Wu Ming didn't think it was Mordred. Why was Wu Ming so sure? It felt wrong. Well, that's right, the Berserker didn't give Wu Ming the same feeling as Mordred at all. Wu Ming was very confident in his intuition and didn't accept any rebuttal. Ahem, after all, even if Mordred became a Berserker, she wouldn't have an obsession with Wu Ming. If it was really Mordred, then Artoria would be very busy right now, and the Berserker wouldn't attack Wu Ming at all. What about Lancer? Wu Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He asked Steno. This is also why I put Lancer at the end. Steno's eyes began to look serious. You must be careful. Lancer is a god. If you really want to call him a demigod, he should have the ability to attack gods. He gave me a very dangerous feeling. Steno recalled the golden figure he had seen before. It shone like the sun. The other party had a special attack against gods, and with the light of the sun, it was too bad for Steno, who was a snake. Like the sun, wearing golden armor, holding a long spear. Wu Ming felt that this person was more familiar the more he thought about it. I hope it's not him. Wuming said softly. If it was really him, Gilgamesh might be in danger. What are you mumbling about? Steno rolled her eyes at Wuming. Nothing. Wuming said casually. Humph. Steno saw that Wuming was perfunctory and didn't ask any more. After a few minutes, Wuming began to complain. I was wondering why you ran so far. Wuming looked at Steno with disdain. They had been walking for a while, and they still hadn't reached where Matthew and the others were. After all, London wasn't small. Ahahaha, Wuming could transform into smoke and move quickly, but Steno couldn't. If it weren't for you chasing me, I wouldn't have run so far. Steno looked at Wuming with disdain. So it's my fault. Wuming was helpless. Then unlock this for me, so I can keep up with your speed. Steno raised her hand, and the silver chain on it glowed faintly. This was the symbol of the Enkidu, which was sealing Steno's power. I have other reasons for not unlocking it for you. At this time, Wuming was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed. That guy went over. That guy. Is there anything else in your enchantment? Steno looked at Wuming in confusion. However, the moment Steno finished asking, Wuming didn't answer. He picked Steno up and started sprinting. Whoa! What are you doing? You gave me a fright. There's no time to explain, we'll talk later. Just like that, Wuming carried Steno in a princess carry and sprinted in the direction of Gadotsi and the others. Chapter 341. When Wuming went after Steno, there were only 4 people left, Gadotsi, Matthew, Anna, and the unconscious Urieli. Gadotsi looked at the direction where Wuming went, then she looked at Matthew. Matthew, is that man also a servant? He's so powerful. Gadotsi was a little excited, and her eyes were shining. Yes, senpai, the man who went after the enemy is a servant, but strangely, I haven't found his aura. His rank may be assassin. After Matthew explained to Gadotsi about Wuming, he wanted to contact their support personnel, but, Doctor? Are you there? No matter how Matthew called the device on Gadotsi's hand, no one responded. What's going on? Just when Matthew was puzzled, Gadotsi's panicked voice came. Matthew, look, the environment around us has changed. Hearing Gadotsi's surprised and slightly panicked voice, Matthew also looked around. The surrounding buildings had become European-style buildings, which were completely different from the modern buildings in Winterwood City. Similarly, there was no one around, and there was no trace of life. Because of the fog brought by Wuming, Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice the change in the surrounding environment at first. If it weren't for Gadotsi's curiosity about the fog, it would have taken Matthew a while to notice the change in the surrounding environment. Matthew walked to a nearby corner and touched the wall. Senpai, this should be a 19th century building. Matthew turned around and looked at Gadotsi. Hey, Matthew, do you know this place? Gadotsi was a little surprised. Yes, I've seen it before. Matthew smiled and nodded. Matthew is really knowledgeable. Gadotsi praised Matthew, which made Matthew blush a little. This fog contains extremely powerful toxins. Ordinary people may die if they stay here for a long time. At this time, Anna suddenly said. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Anna, who had been holding her sister before. At this time, Anna had already hugged Sakura Midu in her arms and protected Sakura Midu with her cloak. What? Senpai, how do you feel now? Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a little panic. Although it's not that I don't trust Anna, I really don't feel uncomfortable. Gadotsi touched her body and shook her head. Really, senpai? Matthew still didn't believe it and looked at Gadotsi with concern. Really, Matthew, don't be so nervous. Gadotsi smiled and waved her hand to signal Matthew to calm down. That, Anna sis, actually, I don't feel any discomfort. It's better to say that the air in the fog is very fresh. At this time, Sakura Midu, who was protected in Anna's arms, also spoke. Anna was silent at this time, thinking. Previously, Anna was silent for a while because of her sister's corpse and didn't take care of Sakura Midu, but when she found that her sister was not dead, she felt relieved. At the same time, Anna also discovered the toxins contained in the fog. After that, she quickly protected Sakura Midu. In other words, Sakura Midu was not protected by Anna for a short period of time. Anna and Matthew could stay in the fog for a long time without being hurt, but their masters were also fine. Gadotsi was not affected at all, and Sakura Midu said that the air was very fresh. It's better to be cautious. After all, this is likely to be Assassin's enchantment. Anna was silent for a moment, but she still didn't release Sakura Midu from her cloak. However, after Anna said the word enchantment, Matthew was shocked. Enchantment. After all, Matthew already knew that Anna was also a goddess, so Matthew felt that Anna's words were very credible. Looking at the somewhat surprised Matthew, Gadotsi, who didn't know what an enchantment was puzzled. Matthew, what is that? Enchantment? Gadotsi asked. Senpai, enchantment is a magic that can instantiate one's own scenery. You can think of it as an independent small world. Matthew knew that his master was not a magician, so he explained it in the simplest terms. Independent small world. Is it that powerful? Gadotsi was also surprised. Well, it's called enchantment. It's called the magic closest to magic. It can be said to be the highest level magic. Matthew nodded. The highest level magic. For Gadotsi, she didn't understand the meaning of magic, but the term highest level magic was very useful for Gadotsi. After all, it was the highest level magic. And among magicians with enchantment are quite rare. It seems that Assassin is not an ordinary person. Matthew looked at the direction where Wuming left. The servant over there is right. She is indeed not an ordinary person. A seductive voice sounded, and it was a voice that everyone was familiar with. What's that sound? Gadotsi looked in the direction of Urieli, who was unconscious. As expected, the unconscious Urieli had woken up. She was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture, looking like a young lady. Ha! Didn't you say that you were killed by Assassin just now? How did you come back to life? Gadotsi's face was filled with a zombie expression. After all, Gadotsi always thought that Urieli was killed by Wuming. How rude of me, unknown master. Let's not talk about how I'm a goddess, how could I die so easily? Moreover, that guy isn't a cruel person. Why would he kill me? Urieli looked at Gadotsi with disgust, which made Gadotsi feel a little embarrassed. Are you awake, sister? Anna knew that her sister was not dead, so she was not surprised to see Urieli wake up. I'm so sad, my dear sister. Can't you be more gentle with your sister? Urieli said uninterestedly. Anna didn't say anything. She didn't even look at Urieli. You won't be our enemy anymore, right? Matthew said uncertainly. Yes, of course. I've been defeated by that man, and I'm his prisoner now. I won't attack you anymore. Urieli didn't feel like a prisoner at all. She looked at Gadotsi and Matthew playfully. Besides, although Master asked us to kill all living creatures, Stheno and I have no intention of attacking you. We're only chasing you because our sister is here. Sigh. Matthew and Gadotsi were dumbfounded. Hearing this, Gadotsi and Mashu remembered that it was Anna who passed by them at the beginning, and then the two of them began to chase after them. Because of that, Matthew had no choice but to propose a collaboration with Anna. I'm sorry. Anna's expression couldn't be seen, but Matthew and Gadotsi felt that Anna's face was extremely red. "Let's not talk about that first. A servant is coming," O'Reilly said calmly. "La-ia dash." Chapter 342. A roar that didn't sound like a human's roar could be heard from the front of Gadotsi and the others. This made Gadotsi, who had just escaped from danger, feel very uneasy. Matthew, who could see his master's uneasiness, raised his shield and stood in front of Gadotsi. "It's okay, Senpai. I am Senpai's servant. I will protect Senpai." Looking at Matthew's smiling face, Gadotsi's fear was swept away. "Thank you, Matthew." Gadotsi smiled at Matthew. "It's coming," O'Reilly reminded. At the same time, a hostile servant appeared in front of Matthew and the others. Because of the interference of the fog, Matthew, who had just become a servant, a dime servant, was obviously not like O'Reilly and Anna. His perception of danger was also a level lower. Anna had already let go of Sakura Madu and raised her scythe at the source of the danger. Sakura Madu also ran to Gadotsi's side and was hugged by Gadotsi. After all, Sakura Madu was still a little girl, and she was very likable. Gadotsi naturally would not reject Sakura Madu, so she picked her up. Leia. As the roar approached, the owner of the roar appeared in front of Gadotsi and the others. The black fog and the full-body armor made it impossible to see the person's face, but they knew that this was a berserker. "Ah, it's our berserker." O'Reilly knew that the berserker would not distinguish between friend and foe, but she still said calmly. Although Matthew was very confused about what O'Reilly meant by "our side," now was not the time to ask questions. "Sister, can you fight with us?" Anna looked at O'Reilly, who was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture. Of course, Mashu and Gadotsi also agreed to the idea of increasing their combat power. "No," O'Reilly said straightforwardly. Looking at Matthew and Gadotsi, who immediately showed regret, O'Reilly continued. "It's not that I don't want to help you, but that man is afraid that I won't be honest, so he has already set a restraint on me." With that said, O'Reilly raised her hand with a bracelet. Above this pair of beautiful and charming jade hands, several silver-white chains with golden light were wrapped around it. "Chains," Gadotsi said, looking at the silver-white chains in confusion. She didn't notice it before. Matthew was also puzzled. Obviously, neither of them noticed it. Perhaps only Anna, who caught O'Reilly before, noticed it. The extraordinarily beautiful chains and the beautiful girl accompanied by her smile made her even more beautiful and seductive. It didn't feel out of place at all, which was why Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice it. "This chain has the ability to restrain the mana and divine power in my body. Also, I was injured by that man's noble artifact earlier, so I don't even have the strength to stand up now." This was also the reason why Yuri and Ellie had been sitting there without standing up. "Besides, you can't defeat him alone. Hurry up and run for your lives." After all, O'Reilly and the Black Berserker were considered to be on the same side, and he wasn't weak at all. When Anna decided to kill O'Reilly and Stheno, the two of them felt that Anna would definitely be able to do it. That was because that was how myths and legends worked. This was how heroic spirit legends worked. The evil dragon was destined to be unable to defeat the dragon slayer, and the pure girl couldn't resist her younger sister who killed and devoured her in order to protect her. That was the tragedy and law of the followers. Therefore, judging from the strength of Anna and Matthew, it was unlikely that they would be able to defeat this berserker. "I won't leave. I won't abandon my sister and leave. I'll protect my sister this time." It was ironic that the pursuer no longer chased after them. The rebels who had made up their minds to kill the pursuer changed their mind and chose to protect the pursuer instead. Fate is often so ****************. Get used to it. Us too. Although you've been chasing after us, it was a misunderstanding. Since you're Miss Anna's sister, we won't abandon you. Gadotsi clenched her fists and looked at Matthew. That's right. I agree with you, Senior. Matthew nodded. It had to be said that Matthew, who had just become a subservient, and Gadotsi, who had just entered the world of magicians, had a very high sense of justice. However, O'Reilly was helpless against Anna, Matthew, and Gadotsi's opinions. You guys are really... O'Reilly shook her head helplessly. Then, before O'Reilly finished her sentence, Anna dashed toward Berserker. Leia! Berserker bellowed at the sight of his enemy charging toward him. He raised the blackened electric pole in his hand and charged toward Anna. Got to say, O'Reilly was indeed a goddess. Her analysis was spot on. Anna was indeed no match for Berserker. Bam! In just a single exchange, Anna was sent flying by Berserker. Mashu! Gadotsi saw that his ally was sent flying, so he quickly shouted at Mashu. Yes! Senior! Although the two hadn't known each other for a long time, Matthew and Gadotsi fell in love at first sight. Ahem, they cooperated very well. Matthew naturally understood what Gadotsi meant. In an instant, Matthew dashed toward Berserker with his shield. Berserker didn't know why, but after seeing Mashu, he was stunned and stood there in a daze. Bam! Boom! Berserker was accidentally knocked away by Matthew and fell to the ground with a loud thud. That's right, accidentally. Matthew, Gadotsi, O'Reilly, and Anna, who was sent flying by Berserker, were also stunned. It couldn't be helped. Such a powerful enemy was sent flying by Matthew's shield bash. Anna wondered how she had been sent flying just now. Maw! Matthew, you're so powerful! Gadotsi exclaimed. When they first came to this world, Gadotsi and Matthew only encountered skeletons and the like. However, because Matthew was a servant, it was easy for him to deal with skeletons. Therefore, Gadotsi felt that Matthew was very powerful at that time. Later, when Gadotsi praised Matthew, Matthew said that those skeletons were just weak soldiers. He was actually very weak, but he encountered a weaker opponent. This made Gadotsi feel a little helpless. Although it didn't mean that she hated Matthew, Gadotsi was still a little depressed when she learned the truth. However, there was one sentence that Gadotsi remembered very clearly and was very touched. I am Senior's servant, and I will always protect Senior. Matthew's sentence moved Gadotsi quite a bit. Then, the two fell in love at first sight. Ahem. Their relationship became more harmonious. But now, after seeing Matthew send Berserker, who was very powerful, Anna, flying, Gadotsi wondered if Matthew said that he was weak to make her feel less proud. Then, while everyone was still in a daze, Berserker, who was sent flying, got up again and rushed to Matthew's side. That's right. For some reason, Berserker did not attack Matthew. Instead, he attacked the others. Other than Matthew, the one who was closest to Berserker was O'Reilly, who could not move freely. Berserker rushed to O'Reilly and raised the electric pole that had been transformed into a noble artifact. Sister! Anna, who got up again, screamed in shock. Boom! Chapter 343. Boom! The Grade D electric pole relic smashed onto the ground, causing the ground to shatter. However, O'Reilly was nowhere to be seen on the shattered ground and under the electric pole. O'Reilly was not sent back to the Martyr's Palace either. Instead, gosh, I almost died, O'Reilly grumbled. Sister. Anna looked in the direction of the voice. At the same time, Mashu and Gadotsi also looked at him. He saw a man wearing a black windbreaker, black leather shoes, and a black top hat standing on top of a pile of rubble. The man was carrying two identical girls in his arms. They were Stheno, who had escaped, and Euryale, who had almost died under Berserker's baton. Ah! It's the mysterious assassin! Gadotsi screamed. The man was Wuming, who had rushed over with Stheno. You took so long to come back, assassin. Euryale sat in Wuming's arms, holding Wuming's neck to keep her balance. She complained to Wuming in a dissatisfied tone. Which family are you from? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have saved you. One Stheno is enough for me. Wuming said helplessly. How can you blame me for that? You're not a gentleman at all. Just like Euryale, Stheno sat in Wuming's other arms. She held Wuming's neck to keep her balance while refuting Wuming. Wuming walked toward Gadotsi with Stheno. Wuming noticed Berserker in the enchantment. Berserker was the Berserker who seemed to be one of the Knights of the Round Table. When he suddenly encountered Berserker, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Wuming directly used Jack the Ripper's inherent barrier, the mist, to trap Berserker inside. Wuming had used the tactic of trapping the enemy in the enchantment before. Wuming had set up a large number of magic formations in the enchantment. After bringing Angelica and Beatrice into the enchantment, Wuming retreated. Wuming could have chosen not to enter the enchantment, but he had to say a few words to them. Although the caster of the enchantment was neither scientific nor magical, Wuming had such an ability. After all, Wuming was the root dragon. The adaptability of time and space was reflected here. The enchantment was like a flexible Rubik's Cube in Wuming's hand. Wuming could arrange the enchantment in various ways. After that, Wuming took Olga and Marie away from there and went to a small shop not far away. Wuming left some mana in the enchantment, which was enough to support Wuming and the others. The enchantment disappeared, and Berserker was released. After that, Wuming encountered Gadotsi and the others, as well as Stheno and Euryale who were chasing them. After using his Noble Phantasm Maria Ripper and the enchantment Noble Phantasm the Dark Mist, Gadotsi, Stheno, and Euryale were transferred to the enchantment. At that time, Berserker, who was trapped in the Dark Mist, had not been released yet. When Wuming chased Stheno, he also checked Berserker's location and found that he was quite far away from Wuming, so he was relieved to play with Stheno. But after a while, Berserker seemed to have sensed a trace of aura coming from the barrier, and it began to go berserk. Wuming could sense that Berserker was running around in the enchantment. And just when Wuming and Stheno were on their way back to Gadotsi and the others, Wuming sensed that Berserker was approaching Gadotsi and the others. After all, the Dark Mist was about the size of London City. Although it was not small, it was not that big either. It could only be said that Berserker was very lucky to have found the location of Gadotsi and the others. As expected of Lucky Bee, after Wuming sensed all of this, Wuming hurriedly carried Stheno and rushed over at full speed. However, Wuming was worried that Gadotsi and the others would have an accident, so he directly used his Dragonist item, which he hadn't used for a long time, and rushed over with agility beyond X. Why do you think Wuming did not hesitate to cheat to bring his treasure trove? It was because the treasures in the treasure trove were really helpful to Wuming. Especially Wuming, who was an assassin at the moment. The treasures were really helpful. After Wuming used an item to speed up his journey, the scene where Wuming saved Euryale, who was about to die under the telephone pole, appeared. The reason why Wuming did not directly remove the enchantment was that Berserker was not far from them, and he might be attacked by other servants. After all, Wuming had verified that Winterwood City had indeed summoned the 7 servants. If he directly removed the enchantment, Berserker would definitely find them. In addition, Berserker did not find Gadotsi and the others in the enchantment, so Wuming wanted to meet with Gadotsi and the others to ask something in the enchantment. Obviously, the orange-haired girl and the shield lady were not people of this world. After crossing through time and space, their space-time aura was a bit serious. The reason why Olga Marie did not have the space-time aura was because she was dead. She was just like a servant. She was dead. She was a mass of magic power. She was a spirit. But even so, Wu Ming still suspected that Olga Marie had something to do with Gadotsi and the others. Stheno only complained because Wu Ming's super speed scared the goddess. After all, Wu Ming's agility was beyond EX, and he was comparable to Wu Ming's Phoenix incarnation. However, the item that increased speed was not something that everyone could use. If Olga Marie used it, she would explode in an instant. After all, if her physical fitness was not up to par, she naturally couldn't use it. Take Wu Ming's avatar for example. In the world of the gods' layers, Wu Ming's original body had descended. Even though he was still in his infancy state, the Origin Dragon's physical body that had undergone some minor baptisms had become extremely powerful. Wu Ming's incarnation had limitations because Wu Ming still had room to grow. It was estimated that when Wu Ming was fully grown, Wu Ming could use multiple incarnations at will, and their power would also be greatly improved. But if Wu Ming's incarnation was used by his incarnation, the limitations would be quite big. After all, if the strength of the incarnation was not enough, it would be torn apart in an instant. As for Assassin, the reason why Silent Wonder didn't cheat and let the 12 clones follow him was because Silent Wonder couldn't use any of his clones. Even if he could use them, the power was very small. If Wu Ming used them by force, he would die. Therefore, it was really useful to bring Dragonist, a treasure trove that contained a large number of very useful treasures. At that moment, Berserker, who lost his target, began to roar furiously. Leia! Gadotsi and the others realized that the enemy had not been eliminated yet. Chapter 344. Gadotsi, Matthew, and Anna tensed up when they heard Berserker's roar. Wu Ming, Stheno, and Urieli, who were in his arms, weren't nervous at all. Stheno and Urieli were goddesses, so they didn't feel anything from a mere berserker. Even when Urieli almost died under Berserker's stick, she didn't react at all. She was still chatting happily with Wu Ming and Stheno. Wu Ming, on the other hand, wasn't afraid at all. Wu Ming had been through a lot, so a mere berserker wasn't enough to scare him. Wu Ming wasn't scared at all. Besides, Wu Ming only used the dark mist to trap Berserker because Olga Marie was there. There were many ways to deal with Berserker, but it would be a waste of time to fight Berserker. After all, this city was filled with danger. Olga Marie might already be in danger outside. Berserker was Wu Ming's half-master, after all. It was better to deal with him as soon as possible. Just as Berserker was about to charge at Wu Ming and the others, especially Wu Ming, Berserker realized that his movements were sluggish as if he had fallen into a bottomless swamp. Berserker is indeed Berserker. You didn't even notice the trap I set under your feet. Wu Ming shook his head in boredom. At that moment, a few stones around Berserker lit up. Simple and mysterious runes could be seen on the stones. That's right, they were Lune runes. These stones were rune stones. Just like Rin Enbin and Livia's gem magic, these rune stones had the same effect. Gem magic was to store spells and magic power in gems in advance, and then use them directly when needed. Magicians needed spells and magic power to cast magic, but because the spells and magic power needed to be used were all stored in gems, the use of gem magic was only to release the gems that stored the spells and magic power. Releasing the gems only required a small amount of mana, so gem magic was very practical. However, since the gems used for gem magic were single-use, it was mostly used by nobles. Of course, Rin Enbin didn't look like a noble anymore, but she was telling the truth when she said that she was down and out. As for the rune, it was engraved on the stone in advance. When it was used, it only needed to be released. However, the rune was extremely powerful. Although it wasn't in terms of attack, it was extremely powerful in other aspects. Therefore, the stone made of the rune could be said to be extremely precious. At this moment, the stones that trapped Berserker were engraved with large amounts of Lune runes that had the effect of slowing and suppressing. Just one stone was enough to cause an obvious effect. At this moment, dozens of Lune runes lit up around Berserker. These dozens of rune stones formed an intricate magic formation with Berserker in the center. This magic formation was made of dozens of binding Lune runes. It wasn't easy to bind Berserker, who had an A-rank endurance. Of course, if Berserker could move, he would be able to escape from the magic formation. However, Berserker was like a fish on the chopping block. It was impossible for him to escape. What? If one were to ask Wuming where the Lune runes engraved on the rune stones came from, Wuming would say that when he first learned the Lune magic, he would experiment with stones by the roadside. Over time, countless rune stones accumulated. Therefore, Wuming chose a portion of the useful rune stones and stored them in his Lune rune space. Of course, Wuming hadn't completed the Lune space at that time, so it was still very small. Therefore, Wuming only stored a small portion of the rune stones and left the rest in the country of shadow. After that, Wuming would sometimes create some rune stones when he was free. After all, Wuming knew that there would be a day when he would need them. Just like now, he couldn't release the true name of the relic in his treasure vault, nor could he use the advanced magic of assassin. Now, he only needed to use a little bit of mana to recreate the Kanzaki magic. One had to know that Silent Cry's mana level was EX. In that case, there was no shortage of mana. Leia. Although Berserker was bound, he still roared unwillingly. Facing the immobile Berserker, Wuming gently placed Stheno and Euriley on the ground, and walked towards Berserker. Wuming came before Berserker and took out 18 rune stones from the black space beside him. As expected, you're Lancelot, right? Wuming said softly. When Wuming said Lancelot's name, Berserker suddenly fell silent for a moment, but soon returned to his frenzied state. Wuming smiled with pity. The hero who was known as the Knight of the Lake, and the Flower of Knights, who had achieved countless feats and received the blessings of the elves, had actually turned into a monster. What a joke. You've been chasing after me. I'm afraid you're obsessed with me. When Wuming was in Camelot, almost all the knights respected, admired, and worshipped Wuming. However, Lancelot was the only one who could be considered a fanatic. However, Lancelot wasn't loyal to Wuming. As Arthur Artoria's knight, Lancelot had always been exceptionally loyal to her, but he also worshipped Wuming fervently. Although he didn't express it, Wuming could feel it. After Wuming's departure, Lancelot's fanaticism shifted to Guinevere. When Guinevere was tricked by Morgan Le Fay to reveal his love for Wuming and was about to be executed, Lancelot didn't hesitate to save Guinevere and escape from Camelot. However, because of this, Lancelot became the second fuse that affected the fall of Britain after Wuming. Surrounding the incident between Lancelot and Guinevere, the people questioned, the nobles stirred up trouble, and Artoria's power was affected. This was a severe psychological blow to Lancelot. Then, Guinevere said, I should be executed. It's not only a release but also a way to lighten the king's burden. After that, Lancelot sent Guinevere back. After that, Artoria successfully exiled Guinevere and saved his life. Lancelot had always been obsessed with Wuming, which was why he kept chasing after Wuming. Not only that, but turning the electric pole into a noble relic and disguising his appearance were also very similar to Lancelot's experience. Defeating the enemy with a tree branch and completing the heroic feat of hiding his identity. Wuming guessed that these two things could be upgraded to noble relic or skill. All these signs were very clear. Coupled with Wuming's probing, Wuming was now very sure that Berserker was Lancelot. I didn't expect to meet you here, Lancelot. How sad. Wuming slowly placed the 18 rune stones around Lancelot and chatted with him. Leia. Lancelot screamed miserably. I know you have a lot to say to me, but let's wait until next time. Compared to Berserker, I think Saber is more suitable for you. After placing the 18 Lune runes on the stones, Wooming turned around and left. At this moment, Lancelot seemed to have calmed down. He stiffly performed a knight salute to Wooming. Ocht de Godin. A magic spell that was comparable to a city's noble phantasm was released. In an instant, a violent explosion came from behind Wooming. The flames and smoke of the explosion were more than 10 meters high, but it did not burn Wooming and the others at all. Goodbye, Lancelot. Chapter 345. The flames raged and burned the entire city of London. After Berserker left, Wooming deactivated the inherent barrier. Everyone returned to the burning city of Winterwood. Hey, can you hear me? That's great. The device here suddenly showed a large amount of magic, and I couldn't contact you guys. That scared me. Thank goodness you guys are fine. As soon as they returned to Winterwood, Godotzi's wrist glowed, and a virtual screen appeared in front of everyone. On the screen was the face of a kind and dispirited young man. He had the aura of a loser. Is this the magician who made the sound? What a loser. That's right. I thought a magician who can use a remote screen like this would be more reliable. How disgusting. Steno and Euriley looked at the young man on the screen with disdain. What's going on? Wait, what's going on? The young man was frustrated at first, but then he realized that the two followers of the goddess in front of him were enemies. Ahahaha. Anyway, they're not enemies now. Roman, don't worry about it. Godotzi smiled awkwardly. I'll explain the situation to you later, Dr. Roman, Matthews said to the young man seriously. Is that so? Well, it's good that you guys are fine. Just now when I suddenly couldn't contact you guys, everyone was worried sick. The doctor called Roman began to spread the dispirited atmosphere as he constantly complained and complained. Yes, I know, Dr. Roman. Godotzi answered Roman helplessly. Matthew noticed that Wooming, the main person who solved the crisis, did not say anything. He was frowning as if he was thinking about something. Mr. Assassin, are you all right? Matthew asked worriedly. Godotzi, who was talking to Roman, also looked at Wooming. That's right. Mr. Assassin helped us. Please let us know if you have any problems. Godotzi smiled innocently and looked at Wooming, who was standing behind Steno and Euriley. Wooming shook his head. I'm fine. I just want to ask you guys something. Ask us. Godotzi and Matthew looked at each other in confusion. Oh, I need to pick up my master. I'll come back later. Wooming did not wait for them to respond and turned around to leave. By the way, there shouldn't be any danger around here, but a sudden intrusion like just now. You guys should be careful. I'll be back soon. After that, Wooming disappeared. Li Xiang, Mashu, that servant is? Roman asked with a slightly dignified tone. He's the one who helped us subdue the two goddesses, Matthew explained. Also, we met a berserker in Assassin's enchantment. Assassin defeated him easily, Godotzi said excitedly. Enchantment? I guess that's why we can't contact you. Roman touched his chin and pondered. Then, do you know the real names of the berserker and the assassin who left, and the real names of the two goddesses? Roman's voice became very soft. He looked at Steno and Euriley carefully. After all, he was a little embarrassed in front of the two goddesses. How dare you talk about the goddesses in front of them, magician who's not here? Steno was an assassin after all, so he could naturally hear it. My real name is Steno, and this is my sister, Euriley. Before Godotzi and the others could react, Steno said his and Euriley's real names casually. After all, we've been defeated by that man. As goddesses, we're prepared to become his captives. Euryale explained why the two of them had told her their real names without hesitation. She also explained why they were no longer enemies. Is that so? Roman's shoulders drooped helplessly. Gadotsi tried to recall the real names of Wuming and the berserker who was defeated by Wuming. I don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, but as for berserker's real name, I remember Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot. What? Without waiting for Gadotsi to finish, Roman interrupted him in surprise, and even gave Gadotsi a fright. Matthew came to Gadotsi's side and shielded Gadotsi with his body. Then, he protested to Roman, "Doctor, please keep your voice down. You're scaring the seniors." "I'm sorry, but this is shocking news." Roman put his palms together and apologized. Then, his expression turned serious. Matthew and Gadotsi were confused. "Judging from your tone, Mr. Assassin called him Lancelot, right? If that's the case, he can't be a nobody." Roman looked at them seriously. "Someone who can defeat the Knight of the Lake can't be weak, even if the Knight of the Lake has lost his mind. That assassin is very strong." "Doctor, what do you mean?" Gadotsi understood. "Although you don't know Mr. Assassin's real name, there is no doubt that he can rival the Knights of the Round Table and even surpass them. To be honest, I really don't understand why such a person is Mr. Assassin. Although the Knights of the Round Table have berserker adaptability, I still find it hard to accept. After all, the Knights of the Round Table were noble knights. Even the rebellious Knight Mordred didn't do anything that violated the Knight's code." The reason why Roman was surprised that Wuming, as an assassin, could defeat berserker was because assassins were generally weak. Generally, they can only be used to collect information and assassinate their master. Let alone berserker, even caster sometimes can't defeat them, let alone rider, saber, lancer, and archer with 3 mounts. That was why caster and assassin were known as the weakest among the 7 classes. Caster was also a powerful enemy after the workshop was completed, but assassin didn't have any other advantages, so sometimes assassin was even weaker than caster. But he used assassin to defeat Stheno, who is also an assassin, and even Euryale, who is an archer. After that, he still had the strength to defeat berserker. It seems that you have encountered a powerful servant. The more Roman analyzed, the brighter Matthew and Gadotsi's eyes became. Stheno and Euryale kept smiling as they watched the 3 of them talking. They didn't interrupt. After all, they knew Wuming's identity, so they wouldn't be too surprised by some things. And according to the various phenomena just now, he can be said to be a very easy person to get along with. If his master agrees, you can cooperate with them to solve the mutation of Singularity F. If he didn't have a master, I would have asked Tachika to sign a contract with him. With him, I won't worry about your safety anymore." Roman looked regretful. "That's great. Matthew, I can solve this singularity soon." Gadotsi hugged Matthew happily. Although Roman meant that Matthew couldn't guarantee Gadotsi's safety, Matthew knew that Roman didn't think so much, so he didn't say anything. He just smiled and nodded to Gadotsi. "Matthew. Tachika Fujimaru." Suddenly, a familiar voice came to Gadotsi and others. But Olga Marie was indeed a famous magician. She quickly calmed down and began to understand the condition of their base through Roman, and began to give orders. Wuming wasn't interested in listening to this. He walked over to the Gorgon sisters and Anna's young master, Sakura Midu. Anna was sitting on a small rock with the sleeping Sakura Midu in her arms. Stheno and Euryale were sitting on the left of Anna and Sakura Midu. Wuming walked over, and Stheno spoke first. "You finally have time to talk to me. I thought you had forgotten about me." Stheno narrowed her eyes at Wuming, who was walking over. What a greedy man. Not only did he capture me, but he also captured another me and heartlessly abandoned us. How heartless, Euryale continued Stheno's words and also narrowed her eyes at Wu Ming. I wouldn't dare to capture the goddess. I heard that anyone who has anything to do with the gods of Greek mythology doesn't have a good ending, Wu Ming shrugged and said disinterestedly. But those are all mortals. If it's you, I don't think you'll suffer, Stheno said cheerfully. Wu Ming ignored the two of them. He walked to Anna's right and sat down. Is she asleep? Wu Ming looked at Sakura Madu and asked Anna. After all, she was his sister-in-law in another world. He should at least show some concern. Thank you for not killing my sister. Anna replied first. Then, she thanked Wu Ming softly. By now, Anna's identity had been made known to everyone. She was the youngest sister of the Gorgon sisters. She had devoured two of her sisters and turned into a monster, Medusa. Of course, the current Anna was Medusa's infant body. In other words, she hadn't killed her sisters yet. Although she had made up her mind to kill Stheno and Euryale, it was undoubtedly torture for Anna. Stheno and Euryale loved their sister. Just like how Anna would protect Euryale, Anna also loved her sister deeply. If it weren't for the curse, Medusa wouldn't have devoured her sister to protect her chastity. Even though Stheno and Euryale did it willingly, it was still a torture for Medusa. It was the pain of killing her loved ones. I didn't want to see such a curse. That's why I chose to do it. Wu Ming looked at Gadotsi and the others as he conversed with Anna. But because of that, I've been on the brink of death, Euryale suddenly interrupted. Jack the Ripper's relic, Mary Ripper, was a curse. There were 3 conditions to trigger the curse. Fog, night, and the target is a female. Back then, Wu Ming had activated the relic during the day. Although Wu Ming had released the fog, which was the dark fog, and the target, Euryale, was a female, Mary Ripper, which didn't fulfill the 3 conditions, only dealt damage. As Wu Ming had deliberately held back and Euryale's skills and the god's core of the goddess helped to block the attack, Euryale didn't die. However, it also caused Euryale to be unable to move. After all, Euryale was indeed injured, and Silent Wonder had placed the pseudo-sky lock on her, which almost caused her to die at Lancelot's hands. Although you came in time to save me, you're the one who caused me to be in danger. Remember to take responsibility, Stheno finished for Euryale. Help me protect my beloved sister, the two of them said in unison. Chapter 347. Wu Ming raised an eyebrow at Stheno and Euryale's shameless request. You two really know how to take advantage of the situation. Why did he say that? It was because Stheno and Euryale seemed to have been connected when they came into contact with Wu Ming. They knew Wu Ming's identity. He was an extremely powerful and majestic legendary dragon from beyond this world, the Dragon of Origin. The two of them knew about the dangers of the Holy Grail War, so they wanted to protect Anna. However, they were unable to protect Anna, so they wanted Anna to kill her and recreate the legend of the Gorgon monster. The appearance of the Gorgon meant that they had the power to protect themselves, but Wu Ming disrupted their plan. However, through Wu Ming, Stheno and Euryale found the hope of protecting Anna, so they made the request. Sister. Anna looked at Stheno and Euryale, touched. Although she was already dead, and her safety was no longer a concern, she was still happy to hear that someone cared about her. Sure enough, no matter what, my sister still loves me. Anna thought to herself. However, Stheno and Euryale stood up as if they were interrogating him. They walked to Wu Ming and looked into his eyes. So, what's your answer? The two asked in unison. I didn't want to fight the other servants. My goal is to solve this disaster, Wu Ming said in confusion, which made Stheno and Euryale a little unhappy. However, now is the time for the servants to unite. Of course, I won't abandon Anna, my ally. Wuming put his hand on Anna's head. Then Anna slapped Wuming's hand away. Don't touch my head. Anna stared at Wuming with her small eyes under the hood. She was especially intimidating. Wuming raised his hand that was slapped away by Anna and smiled awkwardly. Steno and Euryale smiled as well. Of course, they were laughing because Wuming was defeated by Anna. Wuming looked at his hand in confusion. That shouldn't be. May you and the others like it when I touch their heads. Did my affinity aura lose its effectiveness after becoming an assassin? Wuming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. By the way, you two are now someone else's servants, right? Wuming looked at Steno and Euryale. That's right. Our master is a green tall hat man. Steno nodded. She must have used the Holy Grail to cheat, Euryale said. That's how she was able to summon the 7 servants again. And it doesn't exclude the possibility that he can continue to summon servants. Wuming nodded. Steno was right. After all, Wuming did not feel that Lev was a human being. Since he could maintain the contract of 8 servants, including Artoria, he was definitely not an ordinary person. However, it did not exclude the possibility that Lev had placed the contract on Artoria's heart, which was the Holy Grail. You wrapped this chain around me to prevent my master from using the command incantation, right? Euryale raised her small hand. The silver-white chain with golden light decorated her like a priceless accessory. Ah, I have one too. Is this a slave's chain? Steno also raised his wrist and said with a wicked smile. Although it's a simplified version of Enkidu, it's still a divine weapon. It's still effective against gods, Wuming explained. Although I wanted to kill you to be safe, I still had some questions to ask you, so I kept you two alive. Now it seems that you two are really a burden, Wuming said with disdain. Don't talk about my sister like that. Anna glared at Wuming angrily. Her face under the cloak was full of dissatisfaction. Then, Sakura Madu woke up. Wuming was able to escape from Anna's glare. Wuming even wondered if he would be petrified if Anna glared at him for a while longer. Wuming then took out some high-level Lune runestones and sealed Steno and Euryale's mana. He also added a series of negative buffs to their attacks. Of course, Wuming only did this after they agreed. After all, Wuming was not a bad person. Cough, cough, soon, Olga Marie finished giving Roman her orders. Anyway, you will replace me as the commander of Chaldea for now. We'll talk about it after I return, Olga Marie said with an imposing tone as she flipped her hair. Yes, sir. Roman was also affected by Olga Marie's imposing manner. He nodded solemnly. However, Wuming shook his head regretfully when he heard Olga Marie's last sentence. After all, Olga Marie was already dead. She could now be considered a heroic spirit. Other humans could enter the heroic spirit palace after death, but Olga Marie would disappear after this crisis was resolved. Moreover, she would truly die, she wouldn't exist in the heroic spirit palace. If possible, I'd better save her. Wuming thought to himself. No matter what, Olga Marie was still half a servant to Wuming. Even if she had bad intentions at the beginning, Wuming now understood Olga Marie. He felt that Olga Marie was still a good person. If he could save her, he should. Are you done with your discussion? Can you answer my question? Wuming and the other servants walked towards Olga Marie, Gadotsi, and the others. Steno and Euryale naturally followed Wuming. As for Anna, she followed her sister. This resulted in Olga Marie, Matthew, and Gadotsi standing on one side, while Wuming, Steno, Euryale, Anna, and Anna's master, Sakura Madu, stood on the other side. The situation was slightly serious. Wuming had 4 servants on his side, while Olga Marie only had Matthew, a demi-servant. At best, he was a human with the power of a servant, but at worst, he was a half-servant. Looking at the slightly tense scene, Roman on the other side of the screen gulped. What do you want to know? Olga Marie calmly looked at Wu Ming, her nominal servant. Please tell me where you came from and your intentions. I will judge whether you can get our help based on your answers. Wu Ming looked into Olga Marie's eyes. Although with Wu Ming's hearing, he was almost as good as Thino and the others when they were pooping. Is this why you volunteered to be my servant? Olga Marie couldn't help but ask. That's not the point. The point is the name you called when you were in danger, Leviticus. When she heard the name Lev from Wu Ming's mouth, Olga Marie's eyes suddenly shrank. You know, or no, Rafe? Chapter 348. Then, Wu Ming told them about his exploration of the Yuanzhang mountain, where he met Saber, and a man in a green tall hat, who called himself Rafe Lenore Floros. He killed Saber's master, and put the Holy Grail into Saber's heart in an unknown way, and according to Rafe, he received the king's order to exterminate the human race. Then, when I wanted to attack Rafe, Saber used the Holy Grail to activate the noble phantasm, and I was blown away. Steno and the other 7 servants were summoned after I was blown away. Wu Ming's words made Olga Marie, Gadotzi, Matthew, and Roman show an expression of disbelief. That man gave us the order to destroy all the creatures in this city, but I always feel that he wanted to get rid of this man. Steno looked at Wu Ming, and it was obvious that this man was Wu Ming. In short, I always feel that this Rafe should be the Rafe that you said has been sacrificed. That's why I followed you, Olga Marie. Wu Ming finished and waited quietly. After all, Olga Marie and the others needed time to digest. It's unbelievable. Professor Rafe actually. Roman on the other side of the screen said with a somewhat dull voice. Professor Rafe gave me a pretty good impression. Gadotzi scratched the back of her head. Well, Professor Rafe is very popular in Chaldea, I didn't expect. Matthew's eyes dimmed. I don't allow you to insult Rafe. Suddenly, Olga Marie roared and interrupted them. Rafe is dead. Even if he is still alive, Rafe would not want to destroy the human race. Although Olga Marie was shocked, she didn't waver because of soundless one-sided words. Let's not talk about the fact that Rafe was at the center of the explosion in the control room. It's impossible for him to survive. Furthermore, even if Rafe is still alive, he has no reason to destroy human beings like you said, Olga Marie argued. So, I don't believe what you said. I don't think Rafe would do such a thing. In the end, Olga Marie stared at Wu Ming's eyes, quite like an angry little female cat. Wu Ming shook his head with a smile. He knew that this would be the result. When facing danger, her first reaction was to ask Rafe for help. It seemed that Olga Marie really relied on Rafe. People's hearts are unpredictable. Although Rafe is a kind and reliable person in your eyes, you are too dependent on him and ignored his negative side. What if he is pretending? Wu Ming began to preach to Marie. You. Olga Marie glared at Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming interrupted Olga Marie, who was about to say something. And, weren't you in the center of the explosion center? Wu Ming's words were like a sharp thorn that pierced the hearts of the Chaldeans. Yes, why was the director in the center of the explosion alive? Since there was already an example, it was not unacceptable that Rafe, who was in the center of the explosion, was still alive. Moreover, if the explosion was arranged by Rafe, it's not strange that he is alive. Wu Ming's words were very heavy. This sentence, like a sharper thorn, pierced everyone's heart. Now, Gadotzi and Matthew were completely confused. On the other hand, Roman had a thoughtful look on his face. But Olga Marie still didn't believe, and wanted to refute Wu Ming's words. Well, it's also possible that someone pretended to be Rafe, first to frame him, and second to deceive people. Wu Ming's tone was light, he shrugged his shoulders and waved to the crowd. In an instant, the original atmosphere was like a balloon, burst by Wu Ming's words. Everything is possible. Ha ha ha. Wu Ming laughed. The nervous crowd suddenly relaxed. Assassin. Then, Olga Marie, who felt like she had been played, was furious again. Ha ha ha. Looking at the arrogant Olga Marie angry, Wu Ming couldn't help but laugh. Gadotzi, Matthew, and Roman were relieved. Assassin is right. It's also possible that someone used the image of the dead Professor Rafe to do evil. Matthew said righteously. And you still have the task to solve the singularity, and according to Assassin, this singularity was caused by the guy who pretended to be Rafe. Roman continued Matthew's words. Then we are bound to confront the fake, damn it. How dare he pretend to be Rafe, I must teach him a lesson. Olga Marie also calmed down, but they still talked about the guy who pretended to be Rafe. Then everyone, let's work hard together. Gadotzi clenched her fists and encouraged everyone with a smile. Of course there's no problem with Assassin. But you, sleepyhead, just don't make trouble. Olga Marie crossed her arms and looked at Gadotzi with disdain. After all, Wu Ming was still Olga Marie's follower. Even if there were doubts and distrust between the two sides, Olga Marie was relieved that they could talk like this. It's good to be motivated, but usually, such a team of heroes will be wiped out in the end. Steno smiled and looked at Gadotzi and the others. Steno and O'Reilly didn't speak before because they knew how to read people's expressions. As for Anna and Sakura Midu, they were the kind of people who didn't talk much. Now that everyone had left the oppressive atmosphere, Steno couldn't help but mock them. The goddess who has lost her ability to fight should take care of herself. Olga Marie was indeed arrogant and dared to confront the goddess. Director, she's a goddess, please be a little more polite. Gadotzi whispered in Olga Marie's ear. Miss Steno too, please calm down. Matthew also tried to calm them down. Seeing how energetic they were, Wu Ming also calmed down. Wu Ming didn't think that Rafe Lionel Floros was a fake. Wu Ming said that someone might be pretending to be Rafe because he wanted to take care of his temporary master's feelings. Rafe's tone when he introduced himself didn't sound like an imposter at all. Wu Ming used his omnipotent senses to confirm that this was the real Rafe and not an imposter. After all, sometimes mentality and momentum were the key to victory. So, it's time to answer my question. Wu Ming suddenly asked. Everyone just remembered that the two sides were supposed to exchange information. That's true. Then I, who interrogated your master, will tell you. Olga Marie stood up. Chapter 349. Olga Marie briefly explained their situation to Wu Ming. They came from a research organization called Chaldea in the future. Its full name was Finus Chaldea, or Chaldea for short. In 2015, Chaldea detected that human beings would go extinct in 2016, so they began to study the cause of human extinction. Later, Chaldea's people found a singularity in history under the detection of the near-future observation lens, Sheba. To put it simply, singularities were cancer cells that were formed from irregular history within the regular history. It was a cancer that could endanger the entire history of human beings. This singularity was where Wu Ming and the others were, the unrecorded Winterwood City Holy Grail War in 2004. They determined that this singularity was the cancer that would make human beings go extinct in 2016. Therefore, they used Chaldea's device that could send masters through time and space, and prepared to send 48 magicians with ray shift adaptability and master performance to this era to solve this singularity. However, for unknown reasons, when the 47 masters were preparing to be sent, Chaldea was hit by an explosion. Most of the facilities were damaged, and the survivors were less than 20 people except for the 47 frozen masters. The reason why 47 people were frozen was because Gadotsi, the master, dozed off during a meeting and was kicked out by Olga Marie. It had to be said that Gadotsi was really lucky. Then, when Gadotsi wanted to save Matthew, she was trapped in the central control room. Originally a human, Matthew was summoned by Chaldea and bestowed with power when he was on the verge of death. Then the race shift automatically selected masters, and Gadotsi and her servant, Matthew, were brought to this world. As for the rest, Wuming knew most of it, so Wuming stopped Olga Marie, who still wanted to continue speaking. I understand the general situation. In short, you need to solve this singularity, and let history return to the right path, right? Yes, that's true, but what's the matter with your easy voice? Said Olga Marie crossly. After all, the city had summoned 14 servants, and it was very dangerous. My mission is also to protect this world from calamity. Although I'm still an assassin, I'm not that strong, but if there's a chance, I'll change my class. What? Olga Marie, Roman, Gadotsi and the others were shocked. Even Stheno, Urieli, and the others were shocked. The reason why servants were servants was because their spirit base was fixed and they couldn't change their class. However, Wuming actually said that he wanted to change his class, which undoubtedly surprised everyone. Well, after all, I am special. Wuming smiled. But aren't you breaking the rules? Changing your class and rank. Roman began to mutter. That's only if there's a chance. It's not that easy to change your class. Wuming shrugged. In short, let's leave here first. If we stay in the same place for a long time, it's inevitable that other servants will come to find us. Everyone nodded in agreement. After that, Roman said that if they needed help, they could contact him and then turned off the communication. After all, Chaldea still needed him. Then, Wuming, Olga Marie, Gadotsi, Matthew, Stheno, Urieli, Anna, and Sakura Midu formed a small team and embarked on the path to defeat the Great Demon King. Soon, Wuming and the others arrived at the villa where Wuming and Gilgamesh lived. The reason why they came here was because of Stheno's words. The other side has a servant that can kill a god. Are you sure you want to go directly to Yuanzhong Mountain? Although Olga Marie and the others had already chosen Yuanzhong Mountain as their target, because of Stheno's words, everyone had to follow Wuming. And also because of Wuming's words. I have a super first-class servant with me. In this way, Olga Marie and the others followed Wuming to the villa. In the small villa, Wuming skillfully prepared tea for everyone, and then casually sat down as if it was his own home. It seems that she's not at home. Wuming didn't find Gilgamesh in the house. Thinking about it, Gilgamesh wasn't a person who would stay idle. Perhaps she left after discovering the change. But he didn't rule out the possibility that she went to find him. With the idea of a short rest, Wuming didn't rush to leave with everyone. Gorgon's 3 sisters didn't feel uncomfortable. After all, the 3 of them were goddesses. Sakura Midu was too young to care, and Gadotsi and the others were sitting on the sofa with a slightly strange expression. What's wrong? Wuming naturally saw their doubts, so he directly asked. Is this the House of Assassins' previous master? Matthew asked. Gadotsi and Olga Marie also nodded. After all, Wuming's move was too skillful. It felt like he was the owner of this house. If it was their master's house, it would make sense. No, this house was bought in my name, and I originally didn't have a master. Wuming calmly took a sip of tea and then said. Hey. Gadotsi, Matthew, and Olga Marie immediately yelled. I forgot to tell you this. I came here on my own initiative. If I have to say, my master should be the Great Holy Grail. Wuming calmly took another sip of tea and slowly said. Wait a minute, what's going on? Olga Marie slammed the cup on the table and looked at Wu Ming like she was looking at an animal. The sound of the teacup being put down scared Gadotsi and Matthew. If the teacup wasn't sturdy enough, the boiling hot tea would have spilled onto Olga Marie's hand. Although I know your identity is not ordinary and can change your class, but can you still show up on your own accord? Wu Ming calmly took a sip of tea and put down the teacup. He then looked at Olga Marie without any emotion. Ah, that's right. Sorry, my identity is not ordinary, so I can do whatever I want. Director. Calm down. Gadotsi smiled awkwardly. Then Olga Marie angrily sat on the sofa and then grumbled by herself. She kept muttering, "How can you cheat like this? It's really against the rules. By the way, is the companion that assassin mentioned not here?" Matthew awkwardly smiled and began to change the topic to discuss the purpose of everyone here. "Ah, she probably left here to find me." Wu Ming smiled. "Don't worry, it can be said that no one can kill her. Of course, if her stubbornness flares up, the result might be different," thinking that if Gilgamesh was angered, it meant that he had lost half the battle, especially with Lancer, who had the power to kill gods. If Gilgamesh fought him head-on, he would be at a disadvantage. Let's take a break here. After all, if we plan for the worst, we should still have 6 enemies. Wu Ming looked at everyone seriously. Chapter 350. Whoosh. Wu Ming pulled out a moving blackboard and began to explain the power of both sides. In order to distinguish the 7 servants in my group and the 7 servants summoned by the enemy, now use N and O as the distinguishing words. Wu Ming took out a pointer and knocked on the blackboard. New and old, it feels so perfunctory. Someone complained. Then use black and red. Hearing someone complaining, Wu Ming knocked on the blackboard again and changed his mind. Now, let's talk about the situation. Wu Ming coughed and began his speech. According to Stheno, the new 7 servants defeated the black berserker at the beginning, and I defeated the red berserker just now. The berserkers on both sides have already left. Although Hercules had 12 trials, in the face of 7 servants, and all of them were not weak, naturally, he could not survive. And the black archer, well, I am familiar with him, so he is an ally. Wu Ming was still thinking about whether to tell them that he was the master of the archer. After all, Wu Ming's hands had been wearing gloves, Gadotsi and others did not find the command seal. After thinking about it, Wu Ming decided not to tell them. In fact, it was just Wu Ming's bad taste, and I know the black caster. In the current situation, he will definitely choose to help us. Not counting him, Black Archer, Red Assassin Stheno and Red Archer Urieli, and Black Lancer Anna and Matthew, we already have 6 servants. Wu Ming pointed out the advantages of his side. But the enemy's lineup is not weak. Wu Ming began to point out the weaknesses. First of all, the Black Saber is the famous King Arthur. I don't know the real name of the rider, but the other side has the existence of the undead core. As soon as Wu Ming finished speaking, Olga, Marie and the others looked worried. King Arthur, undead core, both of these were very troublesome. Then there's the red team. We don't know the Red Saber's real name. We only know that he's a wretched man. However, to be able to hold the position of Saber, he's definitely not a simple person, Wu Ming said. Everyone nodded. As for Lancer, I think he's the most difficult to deal with right now. According to Stheno's description, Lancer is very likely to be the great hero of India, Karna, Wu Ming said calmly. Karna. Matthew and Olga Marie were shocked. So that's how it is. No wonder it gave me such a dangerous feeling, Stheno said. If it's the hero who's doing charity, it's indeed very disadvantageous for us, Urieli added. What? Who is Karna? After all, Gadotsi had been an ordinary person before. She didn't know about Hindu mythology, so it was normal that she didn't know about Karna. He's known as the hero who's doing charity. He's a hero in one of the two great epics of India, the Mahabharata. He's said to be the son of the sun god Surya, the hero bestowed by the heavens, and the strongest enemy of Arjuna, Olga Marie explained. In the Mahabharata, Karna has a golden armor that's connected to his skin. It was given to him by his father, the sun god Surya, to protect himself. It's basically invulnerable, Wuming explained. But his strongest weapon is the god-killing spear that he gave up the golden armor, Matthew said solemnly. God-killing spear. Indra tricked Karna into giving him the golden armor. Out of guilt, he gave Karna the lightning spear that can kill gods. It's undoubtedly a weapon against gods. At full power, no god can defend against it, Wuming said nostalgically. Wuming had fought Karna before and won. However, there was no doubt that Wuming cheated. He was temporarily given the evil noble phantasm by the suppression force. He locked Karna as evil and took advantage of the opportunity to hurt Karna, who had lost his golden armor. If Wuming had fought Karna with Sodlek's saber rank, there was no doubt that Wuming would have lost. No matter how much Wuming disguised himself as Sodlek, Sodlek was still a human general after all. The mystery was different, and he was crushed by Karna. Wuming shook his head to stop thinking about it. Especially the servants with divinity. Once Karna releases his noble phantasm, he'll most likely die. Wuming's words hit everyone's heart quite hard. What's more, Karna is a brave warrior. His martial arts have reached the peak. Ordinary servants will soon be defeated if they fight against him. Wuming looked at everyone and said earnestly. At least you guys have no chance of winning. This sentence made Matthew and Anna lower their heads. That's right. One of them was a demi-servant, and the other was an immature child. It was indeed difficult for them to fight against Karna, who could kill gods. However, Stheno and Euriley didn't feel depressed. You're talking about us, not you, right? Euriley smiled. Hearing Euriley's words, Matthew and Anna raised their heads and looked at Wuming. This made Wuming feel helpless. I once met Karna with a different rank, and I was lucky enough to defeat him. This surprised everyone, especially Gadotsi. That's amazing, Mr. Assassin. But that's when I was in a different rank. If I were to fight Karna with my current assassin rank, I would definitely die. Wuming shook his head. But you can change your rank, right? Then change your rank, Olga Marie said casually. The others also looked at Wuming in agreement. I also said that there are conditions to change a rank. It just so happens that I don't meet the conditions at the moment. Wuming waved his hand helplessly. Then, how can we win this hero over? From the Mahabharata, we can see that he is a righteous man. Olga Marie thought for a moment and said quickly. Impossible. Wuming directly denied Olga Marie's words. Why? Olga Marie slammed the table unconvinced. I fought with Karna, and in that battle, I learned about Karna's character. Wuming poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip. He is a servant who completely obeys the master's words. He completely wants to turn himself into a weapon, even though the servant is the master's weapon, Wuming said, a little bored. Oh. Then we are definitely going to lose. Gadotsi said, a little depressed. Senpai. Matthew wanted to comfort Gadotsi, but he didn't know what to say. After all, the enemy was too strong, and they couldn't win him over. That's why I brought you here, isn't it? Wuming smiled. Ha. Chapter 351. Do you mean that your companion here, the servant, can help us deal with Karna? Olga Marie was indeed one of the 12 monarchs. Although she was still young, her mind worked quickly. Yes, if she's steady, she can be said to be invincible. Wu-Ming smiled slightly. Then, assassin, can you tell us her real name? Gadotzi asked curiously. Wait a minute, senpai, it's rude to ask for her real name as soon as we meet, Matthew said nervously. After all, the real name was the secret of every servant. Many times, the weakness of a servant could be known through the real name. Is it that serious? Gadotzi touched her head. After all, Gadotzi didn't understand these rules, so Wu-Ming certainly wouldn't be angry. Don't worry, just knowing her real name won't affect her. Wu-Ming smiled. The ancient king, the hero king, Gilgamesh. That's her name. After Wu-Ming said this, Olga Marie, Matthew, Steno, and the others gasped. The hero king, Gilgamesh. Gadotzi asked in confusion. The ancient king who collected almost all the treasures in the world and cut off the connection between gods and humans. That's already the highest level of heroic spirit, Olga Marie said. I didn't expect that person to be attracted by the Holy Grail War. How ironic, Steno said. Wu-Ming knew what Steno was talking about. The ancient king, who had almost all the treasures in the world and supreme power, was reduced to a servant and participated in the dirty magician ceremony. The Holy Grail War was a dirty ceremony, a war that was triggered by the selfishness of magicians using the weapons called servants. War was dirty. Whether it was in the name of righteousness or something else, the essence of war would never change. This was also why Joan of Arc felt that her hands were dirty. Even if the French army was the righteous side in the war between England and France, and even if Joan of Arc had been holding the holy flag on the battlefield and did not kill anyone, she still participated in the war. Because of her filth, she did not refuse the trial, did not argue for herself, and did not feel that it was unfair. She calmly accepted the burning at the stake. Wu-Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about Joan of Arc. In short, the hero king, Gilgamesh, is definitely on our side. The direction is good. After Wu-Ming finished speaking, everyone's heart sank. Although they hadn't seen that king, they were sure that he was very reliable. For now, let's stay here for one night. Let's not talk about Olga Marie, Tachika must be very tired. Gadotzi smiled embarrassedly when he heard himself being mentioned. I'm a little tired, senpai, take good care of your body. Matthew said with concern. Ha ha ha, I know, Matthew. Gadotzi responded to Matthew and smiled happily. However, Wu-Ming always felt that she was full of emotions. Wait a minute, why exclude me? I'm also very tired. Olga Marie said rather angrily. Well, you're my master. How can you be tired so quickly? Be strong. Wu-Ming teased Olga Marie. Damn it. Assassin, you bastard. Olga Marie felt that her brain must be abnormal to sign a contract with this guy in front of her. Ha ha ha, Wu-Ming laughed and disappeared in spirit form. I'll go out and investigate the situation first. As for food, there are ingredients in the kitchen refrigerator. You can make it yourself. You can also familiarize yourself with this house and choose a room for yourself. Well, that's it. After that, Wu-Ming's aura completely disappeared. Then, forgive me for being rude. Steno said and stood up. Ha! Is the goddess going somewhere? Gadotzi asked in confusion. Ah, of course, to a room. The goddess needs to rest, Urieli replied and stood up with Steno. Master needs to rest. With that, Anna picked up the quiet Sakura Madu and followed her two sisters. Thank you. When they passed by Gadotzi, Anna's voice came softly. This voice made Gadotzi laugh. What? Aren't you being quite frank? After the three Gorgon sisters left, Olga Marie spoke. Seriously, they're all so willful. Olga Marie complained as she sat on the sofa and angrily drank tea. I feel like the director and assassin are very compatible, Gadotsi suddenly said as she looked at the complaining Olga Marie. What do you mean? I don't want that guy to be compatible. Seriously. Olga Marie glanced at Gadotsi and said calmly. Olga Marie's anger had almost subsided. After all, she got used to being angry. I'll go see what ingredients we have in the fridge. Matthew stood up and bowed to the two before walking to the kitchen. What's wrong with Matthew? Gadotsi asked after Matthew left. You noticed it too. Olga Marie crossed her arms and looked in the direction Matthew left. Yeah, Matthew is giving people the feeling that he has something on his mind. Gadotsi finished and stood up. I'll go take a look. With that, Gadotsi left. Yeah. After all, you're Matthew's master. Olga Marie said calmly as she watched Gadotsi leave. Really, when will my servant care about me? Olga Marie couldn't help but think of the only servant who was willing to contract with her, and the only one who could contract with her. In the kitchen, Matthew began to check the appliances after he found the kitchen. The gas furnace is normal. The electricity and drinking water are still there. That's great. Matthew said happily. After all, if the electricity and water were cut off, it would be terrible. Matthew. Suddenly, Gadotsi's voice came from behind Matthew. Hey. Senpai, why are you here? Matthew turned around and looked at Gadotsi who came in. Because I'm a little worried, so I came to see you. Gadotsi smiled. Foo. At this moment, an unknown white creature that looked like a squirrel, cat, or dog appeared at the entrance of the kitchen while making a foo sound. Ah! It's Foo. Matthew shouted in surprise. Foo, the little guy called Foo called out and jumped onto Matthew's shoulder. Foo's wine glass disappeared when we were running away from Stheno and Urieli. I didn't expect it to find us. Gadotsi was surprised. Of course, senpai. Foo is very intelligent. Matthew smiled and stroked Foo while talking to Gadotsi. Foo, on the other hand, looked very obedient. If Wu Ming was here, he would be surprised. Chapter 352. It's incredible, senpai. Foo only appeared in front of the two of us. Matthew smiled. Maybe it's a coincidence. Gadotsi shrugged her shoulders. He didn't think about foes matter anymore, and Gadotsi told him the purpose of his visit. By the way, Matthew, what are you worried about? Gadotsi's words made Matthew fall into silence. Actually, senpai, I can't release my noble phantasm, and I don't know the real name of the servant that I possess. Matthew said softly. Is it important that you can't release your noble phantasm and don't know the real name? Matthew is Matthew, and that won't change. Gadotsi instantly held Matthew's hand. Gadotsi, who followed Wu Ming, Olga, Marie, and the others, already knew the importance of noble phantasm. However, Gadotsi didn't think that Matthew was embarrassed because he couldn't release his noble phantasm. However, Matthew still looked very uncomfortable. I know, with Assassin Senpai, your safety won't be threatened. Matthew said little by little. That's not it. Gadotsi instantly interrupted. Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a stunned expression on his face. Assassin is very strong and reliable, but Assassin is the leader's servant, and the only servant that can protect me is you, Matthew Gillett. Gadotsi grabbed Matthew's shoulders with both hands, and looked straight into Matthew's clear eyes. Foo, who was originally on Matthew's shoulder, had already jumped away. Senpai. Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a somewhat helpless expression, and then he was touched. Since we can't release the relic, we'll ask for Assassin's help when he comes back. I'm sure Assassin will have a solution, Gadotsi encouraged Matthew. But the servant's real name. Why don't we ask Assassin later? Maybe he will know. Ahahaha. Gadotsi laughed awkwardly. Really, you need someone else to confirm your servant's true name. Suddenly, Olga Marie's voice sounded. Gadotsi and Matthew turned around and saw Olga Marie at the kitchen door. Really, it's not easy to find a kitchen. Olga Marie complained casually. After all, our house was considered a small villa, and the structure was quite unique. Matthew and Gadotsi were lucky to be able to find them so easily. Sigh. Director, why are you here? Gadotsi's expression changed from embarrassment to confusion. Of course, I don't trust you to buy two. After all, there are only two of you in Chaldea. Olga Marie said impatiently. That. Doesn't Assassin count? Matthew raised his small hand and asked like a student. After all, Assassin is a servant with a special identity. Not to mention that he can't follow me back to Chaldea. With Assassin's identity, I don't think the small Chaldea can tolerate him. First, he could summon by himself, and now he could change his class. No matter how you think about it, Wuming was a guy with a super mysterious identity. How could Chaldea tolerate such a hero with a special mission? Moreover, the master can see the attribute value of his servant. In short, because you are too weak, you can't see Matthew's real name. Olga Marie said as she stretched out her hand to Gadotsi and pulled Gadotsi's cheek. It hurts. It hurts. Director, please be gentle. Gadotsi complained incoherently. Humph. In short, as long as you become stronger, you can see Matthew's ability value and his real name. Work hard. Olga Marie snorted and loosened her hand that pulled Gadotsi's cheek. Yes, I know. Gadotsi's eyes were filled with tears as he rubbed his cheeks. Matthew smiled awkwardly. Then, Gadotsi seemed to remember something, so she asked Olga Marie. By the way, Director, do you know Assassin's real name? Gadotsi asked curiously. I'm also very curious about Assassin's real name. Mashu also looked at Olga Marie with a curious look. You two are so annoying. Hurry up and cook for me. Then, with Olga Marie's yelling, Matthew and Gadotsi began to busy themselves in the kitchen. How can I see something like a real name? I don't have master qualifications. If he didn't have such a cheating method, I wouldn't be his master. Olga Marie said lightly while looking at Matthew and Gadotsi busy in the kitchen. And I'm also a fake master. After Matthew and Gadotsi made some simple dishes, Wuming came back. However, Wuming returned with a rather disheveled big blue dog. A big blue dog. Gadotsi said doubtfully. That's a servant, can't you see it? Olga Marie refuted Gadotsi's words. Really, a servant in front of you can't even detect it, and it's not even an assassin. Olga Marie couldn't help but think. Yo ladies, the big blue dog greeted Gadotsi and others frivolously. Bang! Wuming gave him an elbow hit in an instant. Aw dash! Hey! I'm injured. Listening to his complaints, Wuming glanced at him with disgust. You almost left, so behave yourself, Cuculin. That's right, the big blue dog was Cuculin who caught Fergus's noble phantasm neon sword. After Wuming finished, he threw Cuculin on the sofa. Ha ha ha, but I have to say hello when I see the ladies. Cuculin was a little hurt, but he still looked frivolous. Cuculin. Is that the hero of the Long March of the Bulls? Sure enough, he looks like a playboy. Olga Marie looked at Cuculin's frivolous appearance and said awkwardly. He's the caster I said would help us, but now it seems that this guy can't even protect himself. Wuming spread out his hands. What happened? Gadotzi asked. This guy caught Fergus' noble phantasm, I didn't expect him to survive. Wuming held back his laughter and explained to everyone. Fergus. He's Cuculin's adoptive father and friend. Olga Marie was relieved. The neon sword you mentioned, is it the magic sword that can cut off 3 mountains? Yes, that's the sword. The identity of the red saber has been confirmed, it's that old rogue. Wuming said with a slightly angry expression. It seems that Assassin and Fergus must have experienced something, Gadotzi and others thought so. Ha ha ha, it's just that Fergus flirted with Maeve, you still hold a grudge. Cuculin suddenly laughed. Chapter 353. Because Wuming used to work for Maeve, he was on the side of Connaught. After the war with Ulster, he ran over and said that he wanted to work for Maeve. Because of Fergus' frivolous words, Wuming threw him out. Of course, the process took a lot of effort. After all, Maeve was someone that Wuming recognized as his sister. Even if Maeve wanted to fall in love and get married, Wuming would never allow an old rogue like Fergus to come, not to mention that Maeve did not have such thoughts. Maeve, who was obsessed with Wuming, did not get married until she died. Instead, she played with men and let them die one by one under her pomegranate skirt. Moreover, they died before they could take advantage of her. Of course, Wuming also contributed to this. As a warrior who protected his sister's chastity, Wuming naturally shot those who wanted to use force. You said that you didn't want to marry Maeve, and you didn't let her find another man. You even made our 2 countries go to war. I really don't know what you were thinking. Cuculin complained about Wuming helplessly. She was already throwing herself at you, why didn't you want her? It's fine if you don't want her. Don't get in the way of others. Don't get us involved. Back then, for some, reasons, Wuming had been protecting Maeve. But after all, Wuming was a traveler and had no plans to stay in any place. Then, in order to prevent Wuming from leaving, Maeve started the war between Connaught and Ulster. I don't have a choice either. Wuming rubbed his forehead. Forget it, forget it. Let's not talk about this. It's all in the past anyway. Cuculin, who hated Maeve, began to change the topic. With the identity of an enemy established, they have an advantage in launching a general attack on us, Wuming said. How did you escape? Wuming asked Cuculin. Cuculin was not the kind of guy who would throw his life away even if he knew that he could not win. Come to think of it, it seemed to be true, cough cough, speaking of which, Fergus wouldn't say, "Aw. I'm going to use my noble phantasm," and so on to let Cuculin escape. Fergus must have judged that Cuculin could not escape, so he released his noble phantasm. Logically speaking, Cuculin should have left. However, Cuculin, who was covered in wounds, smiled. Don't underestimate the Lune Rune, brother. Cuculin smiled. Even so, Cuculin was seriously injured. As the prototype of the holy sword, the demon's sword, I was careless. Wuming smiled. The Lune Rune was something that the Norse main god, Odin, had sacrificed an eye in exchange for. How could it be weak? Wuming had never used the Lune Rune in battle, so he had neglected the power of the Lune Rune. You are the first disciple of the Master. If the Master knew, you would be finished. Cuculin laughed at Wuming. You'd better behave yourself. Who knows when you'll disappear, Wuming said. He disappeared in an instant and appeared in front of Cuculin. Once again, he gave Cuculin an elbow strike. Pfft. I said I was injured. Cuculin rubbed his wound again and complained loudly. So, do you need to make a contract with this master? Wuming said, pointing to Gadotzi. After Cuculin's explanation, his master disappeared in an instant, leaving nothing behind. Wuming guessed that the other black followers were the same. Although the black followers in Winterwood City had lost their master, because of the mutation of the Holy Grail, the black followers without a master could still ensure that they would not be sent back to the Hall of Valhalla through the connection of the Holy Grail. But Fergus's magic sword was not so easy to block, and Cuchulainn barely survived by relying on the power of the Lune Rune. Hey! Gadotsi saw Wuming pointing at her, and she was a little overwhelmed. That, if Mr. Cuchulainn is willing. Gadotsi said shyly. Oh. It's a young master. Of course, I am willing. Cuchulainn was instantly excited when he saw that his master was a young girl. Boom! It was the sound of a huge object falling to the ground. Mr. Cuchulainn, please respect yourself. Matthew stood beside Gadotsi, slammed his huge shield to the ground, and then looked at Cuchulainn seriously. Fortunately, Matthew did not use too much strength, or the floor would have to be changed again. Wuming thought. Yes, I am very honest. Cuchulainn said. Wait a minute. Olga Marie walked in front of Wuming and Cuchulainn. What's the matter with you two? Olga Marie roared. Olga Marie's understanding of Cuchulainn had been refreshing since he came in. After all, the conversation between Cuchulainn and Wuming was very clear. Your real identity is a warrior of Connaught, the silver dragon Sira, who is as famous as Cuchulainn. Olga Marie looked at Wuming's eyes. Sira. Gadotsi looked at Matthew in confusion. That, senior, it's like this. Matthew took Gadotsi's hand, quietly went to the side, and told Gadotsi about Sira in history. Oh, senior brother, you haven't told them your real name yet. Cuchulainn, who was sitting on the side, said gloatingly. After all, I'm not Sira now, just a man-killer fiend. Wuming helplessly spread out his hands. Assassin. Jack, is your real name Jack the Ripper? After hearing Wuming's words, Olga Marie guessed Wuming's real name. Fog, London, black clothes and hat, being able to call himself Jack, a pair of female noble phantoms, Olga Marie judged our real name from all this information. Man-killer fiend. Are you kidding me? How could you be a man-killer fiend? Cuchulainn frowned and asked in confusion. Wuming's senior brother, a great hero, turned into a man-killer fiend, which really damaged his image. Well, this is for the vengeful spirits of those children. I replaced them and became Jack the Ripper. Wuming smiled indifferently. Replaced the vengeful spirits, became Jack the Ripper. Olga Marie carefully thought about Wuming's words, savoring the meaning. However, Cuchulainn didn't understand at once. So that's how it is, as expected of you. It seems that you have experienced a lot in the future. Through Wuming's words, Cuchulainn immediately guessed why his senior brother became assassin Jack the Ripper. It was nothing more than absorbing Jack the Ripper's spiritual base, freeing the vengeful spirits that were originally trapped, and becoming Jack the Ripper himself. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Then, Wuming looked at Olga Marie. Sorry, Master, at first I wanted to hide my real name, but later I realized that you might not like this identity, so I always wanted to hide it. What an idiot. Olga Marie said softly. Olga Marie raised her head and looked into Wuming's eyes. You listen to me. You are my follower. No matter what, I won't mind. Looking at Olga Marie's determined eyes, Wuming smiled. What, a frank Olga is not bad. Chapter 354. Then, Wuming was scolded by the arrogant Olga Marie again. Wuming didn't care, after all, he was arrogant. Later, Cuchulainn and Gadotsi concluded a servant contract. Originally, Cuchulainn wanted to conclude a temporary servant contract, but because it was not conducive to physical recovery, Wuming forcibly changed Cuchulainn's mind and concluded a formal contract with Gadotsi. My body has gradually begun to recover. I didn't expect the little girl to have such excellent qualifications as a master. Cuchulainn felt his physical condition and couldn't help but look at Gadazi. Of course, this was not a flirtatious look, but a surprise at Gadazi's potential as a master. Don't underestimate Tachika, she has excellent master qualifications. Patting Cuchulainn on the shoulder, Wuming smiled. Olga Marie was a little jealous at this time. After all, her master contract with Wuming was a half-finished product that Wuming cheated. However, I still want to be my master. Wuming, who noticed Olga Marie's expression, continued. This made Olga Marie blush again, and Olga Marie glared at Wuming angrily. However, Olga Marie looked very much like an angry kitten. The food is getting cold, let's eat first. In order to avoid embarrassment, Matthew took the lead in changing the topic. Gadazi and Matthew had already finished cooking and brought the food to the table. Now they could enjoy it directly. Suddenly, Gadazi let out a loud cry. By the way, Mr. Assassin, there is one more thing I have to trouble you with. Although Cuchulainn's previous recklessness made everyone know Wuming's other identity, the Connaught Silver Dragon Wuming still asked everyone to call him Assassin or Jack. After all, he now came with this identity. Is there anything else, Tachika? Wuming asked gently, which made Gadazi blush. After all, Wuming was really handsome in a black leather jacket and a black top hat. Can you tell Matthew's real name? Or her noble phantasm's real name is fine. Gadazi knew that her request was a bit difficult, but she still put her hands together and begged Wuming. Tachika, didn't I say, as long as you become stronger, what? Noble phantasm is an instinct. Olga Marie was about to say something, but Cuchulainn instantly interrupted her. Marie suppressed her anger, she looked at Cuchulainn's eyes, and didn't say anything. Instinct. Mashu pondered over Cuchulainn's words. Ah, yes, it's instinct. Cuchulainn spread out his hands. Servant and noble phantasm, these two exist together and are not separated from each other. If you haven't been able to release your noble phantasm, it's probably because your instinct hasn't been activated. With that, Cuchulainn looked at Gadazi, revealing a dangerous look, and at the same time, emitting a murderous aura. Gadazi was a little puzzled, but Matthew and Olga Marie instantly understood what Cuchulainn meant. Mashu quickly raised her shield and stood in front of Gadazi, while Olga Marie looked at Cuchulainn with a scrutinizing look. Tachika is now your master, don't think about doing anything dangerous. After all, even if Cuchulainn was someone Wuming knew, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't do something to hurt them. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, so it was normal for her to have such thoughts. Okay, Cuchulainn, don't tease them anymore, Wuming said. Well, I'm just livening up the atmosphere. Cuchulainn smiled and waved his hand, dispelling the murderous aura. Then, I'll leave the noble phantasm and the real name to you. I'm going to rest, brother. After saying goodbye to Wuming, Cuchulainn's spiritual form disappeared. Wuming shook his head helplessly at Cuchulainn's character. Don't mind him, he's just like that, Wuming said to Gadazi and the others. Immediately, Matthew also put down his shield and retreated to Gadazi's side. So, can you let Matthew use his noble phantasm? Olga Marie asked, sitting on the sofa with her arms crossed in front of her chest and her legs crossed. Let's not talk about this in a hurry. Let me ask you, Matthew, did the servant who lent you his power tell you his real name? Wuming looked at Matthew. No. Matthew was stunned, then shook his head. Really, what was the servant who gave you power thinking? He didn't even tell you his real name and noble phantasm. It's really a headache. Olga Marie covered her head. Generally speaking, a servant's noble phantasm was related to their own life experience. Matthew didn't know the real name of the noble phantasm, so it was normal that he didn't know what the servant was. Wu Ming smiled, then Wu Ming continued to ask. So, when you saw Berserker, Lancelot, did you have any reaction? Although Matthew didn't understand Wu Ming's intention, he still thought about it. When I saw him, I didn't feel anything, but when I knew he was Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, I was a little angry. Matthew, why are you angry? Gadotzi was a little puzzled. I don't know. Wu Ming shook his head. So, you mean that the heroic spirit who gave Matthew power has a special relationship with Lancelot? Olga Marie was a first-class magician, and she immediately guessed Wu Ming's intention. That's right. Wu Ming nodded. The reason why he asked Matthew this question was because Wu Ming knew the real name of the servant who gave Matthew power from the beginning. The most noble of the Knights of the Round Table, the Knight of the Holy Grail, Galahad, the Knight of the Holy Grail. That was the real name of the servant who gave Matthew power. For a long time, Matthew had addressed Wu Ming and Gadotzi as seniors, but he didn't use the term senior to address others. He addressed Gadotzi as a senior because the two of them formed a bond in Chaldea, and others addressed Wu Ming as senior by Matthew, meaning that Wu Ming was senior Wu Ming. But in fact, Galahad was the only one who addressed Wu Ming as senior back in Camelot. Because Lancelot admired Wu Ming the most, he told his son Galahad to be particularly polite to Wu Ming, but Wu Ming didn't like the word Lord, so Galahad addressed Wu Ming as senior. Although that was one of the reasons, Wu Ming recognized that the power Matthew used was Galahad's because of the shield. The shield was basically the same as the shield that Artoria held during the Round Table Conference, but the details and size were different. Even Bedivere couldn't bear the burden of the Round Table, only Galahad could. The purest and noblest knight of the Holy Grail, Galahad, only he could bear the burden of the Round Table. The servant who gave you the power to survive from the brink of death and gave you the power to protect Tachika is named Galahad. Chapter 355. Galahad. Matthew put one hand on his chest and whispered the name softly. Thank you, Assassin Senpai. Matthew bowed to Wu Ming happily to express his gratitude. You don't have to thank me, Matthew. Even without me, you would have known Galahad's real name sooner or later. Wu Ming smiled and shook his head. Then, Wu Ming gave Matthew a doji. And don't be happy too early. Although I know Galahad's real name, I don't know the real name of his noble phantasm. Why? Gadotzi was puzzled. After all, noble phantasms are obtained after becoming a heroic spirit. Although there are many physical weapons and noble phantasms, most of them are obtained after becoming a heroic spirit. Wu Ming looked at Gadotzi and explained to her. For example, the noble phantasms of Cuchulain, Fergus, and the others were with them when they were alive. Generally speaking, this kind of noble phantasm was the name of the weapon itself, so knowing the name of the weapon would mean knowing the real name of the noble phantasm. However, there were many noble phantasms that had never been seen before in history. The most classic example was the treasured artifact that betrayed the witch Demetrius, Rule Breaker Talisman, Rule Breaker. It was the embodiment of the traitor witch's life, just like her entire life. The Rule Breaker Talisman was also full of a betrayal. Although the noble phantasm itself was not as powerful as the knife, it had the ability to nullify all magic. It could completely nullify contracts based on magic, or life forms born with magic. Needless to say, this kind of noble phantasm was much more powerful than the Geibalg, which was a weapon with a physical body. Galahad's noble phantasm appeared after becoming a heroic spirit, so I don't know. Wu Ming finished his explanation. Aren't you special? How can you not see through the noble phantasm of a servant? Olga Marie looked at Wu Ming with some dissatisfaction. Then I'm really sorry. I don't know about this kind of relic that only exists after it has been upgraded. Wu Ming shrugged indifferently. That's a pity. Gadotzi said regretfully. It's okay, senpai. At least I already know that the servant who gave me power and my benefactor is Galahad. Matthew comforted Gadotsi with a smile on his face. Well, you're right. I've already completed half of it. When I become stronger in the future, I'll be able to find out about Galahad's noble phantasm. Gadotsi said excitedly. At this moment, Olga Marie looked at Wuming. You can't get Matthew to use the relic. Wuming smiled at Olga Marie's question. I didn't say that I couldn't let Matthew use the relic. I just didn't know the real name of the relic. But, how can you use the relic without knowing its real name? Gadotsi was completely confused. She tilted her head and looked at Wuming with Matthew. Olga Marie, on the other hand, was frowning. Even she couldn't figure out how to use the relic without knowing its real name. Looking at the puzzled crowd, Wuming began to explain about the relic. After the death of various characters, according to their life experience, they were upgraded and also obtained a trump card called the relic. The relic is the trump card of every hero, and to release this trump card, you need to call out the real name of the relic. This is indeed the case. Wuming finished, sat on the sofa and poured himself a cup of tea. Speaking of which, Gilgamesh's tea was not ordinary. It had been so long, but the tea was still warm. Go on. Olga Marie said impatiently. Okay, don't worry. Wuming took a sip and put the teacup down. The so-called name of the relic is actually just a form. Cuchulain also said that the relic is an instinct. Is there a limit to your instinct? If that's the case, it's not an instinct. Wuming spread out his hands. Now, for Matthew, what he lacks is not only the real name of the relic, but also the recognition of the relic. Only then can he unleash the power of this table, shield. Wuming almost said the table, but fortunately, he changed his words in time. What did you say in the end? Gadotsi seemed to have heard something different, but she didn't hear it clearly. Ahem. Don't worry about the details. At present, we need to give Matthew's shield a real name. This time, it will be easier to release it when needed. Wuming quickly changed the topic. Then, how about Assassin give Matthew a real name for the relic? Gadotsi suggested. This shouldn't be done by me, but by you guys from Chaldea. Wuming said, looking at Gadotsi, Matthew, and Olga Marie. Is it up to us? Gadotsi thought, but she didn't have a clue. Naming something, Gadotsi inexplicably felt that the world was full of malice. Then, when Mashu releases her noble phantasm, how about shouting Lord Chaldeus? Olga Marie suddenly said from the side. Lord Calds. Matthew carefully thought about the real name of the relic. Well, thank you, Director. Matthew sincerely looked at Olga Marie and thanked her. Olga Marie looked at Matthew's sincere smile and was a little stunned. No. It's nothing. Then, Olga Marie said softly. Without a doubt, Olga Marie was proud again. Great. Matthew. Then you can release the relic. Gadotsi hugged Matthew and said happily. But don't be happy too early. At this moment, Wuming retorted. After all, if you can't be recognized by the relic and release the relic, then the so-called Lord Chaldeus is a joke. Wuming looked at Matthew and Gadotsi seriously. Assassin is right. If Matthew can't release the relic, then the real name I gave you will be wasted. You have to work hard. Olga Marie encouraged. Yes. I will work hard. Matthew nodded excitedly. You too, Tachika Fujimaru. As a master, your self-awareness is really bad. I will train you later. Olga Marie said to Gadotsi sternly. It can't be. Gadotsi's face was filled with worry. For this girl who was just an ordinary person not long ago, special training was like running a few kilometers in military training. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and eat. After eating, we will train. Olga Marie pinched Gadotzi's cheek and urged. Senior, you have to work hard. Matthew cheered her on. Yes. Gadotzi said helplessly. Wuming looked at Matthew's figure and couldn't help but think of the pure young man, Galahad. Maybe, you didn't tell her your real name to train her. But with me here, your idea may not work. Galahad, well, I will help you train her. Wuming looked out of the window. Although the sky was dark, the future was full of hope. Chapter 356. After dinner, Gadotzi was dragged by Olga Marie for special training. It was called special training, but in fact, it was Olga Marie telling Gadotzi about magicians, servants, and masters. After all, even if Gadotzi stepped into the world of magicians, she was still a girl. Becoming a master meant that he might die, and Olga Marie's task was to make Gadotzi recognize all of this. She didn't want him to disappoint Mashu and be a qualified master. While Olga Marie was doing special training for Gadotzi, Wuming was also doing special training for Matthew. In the yard, Wuming and Matthew were fighting against each other. Mashu put her shield on the side of her body and was ready to fight. Wuming, on the other hand, wielded a silver-white longsword. That's right, it was the meteor silver. It was reasonable to say that Wuming's assassin class wouldn't have weapons of other classes, but Wuming cheated by bringing his noble phantoms, Dragonisht, with him. Although this class couldn't release the meteor silver, it could still be used for hand-to-hand combat. As a shielder, you must have a defense that can resist all attacks. That shield is already very strong, so you have to start with the person holding it, Wuming said carefully. Matthew listened carefully to Wuming's words, nodding his little head from time to time. Next, I will attack your shield. You only have one goal, and that is to hold on under my attack. Wuming held the meteor silver and put it in front of him and said, Next, I will attack your shield. You only have one goal, and that is to hold on under my attack. Are you ready, Matthew? Wuming said sternly to Matthew. Yes. Senpai, I am ready. After saying that, Mashu placed her shield in front of her and looked at Wuming from the corner of her eyes. Let's go. After that, Wuming rushed toward Matthew. Clank. The holy sword and the holy shield collided, making a very harsh sound. Ah! Matthew blocked the attack and made a muffled sound. You can't do it, Matthew. You have to know that my strength is only C-class. You have to adapt to this impact, or your master will die, Wuming criticized Matthew. Yes. Senpai. Matthew responded loudly. Again. After that, Wuming hit Matthew's shield again. Clank clank clank. Silent continued to attack Mashu's shield, and there was a burst of harsh sound. Matthew struggled to support himself and took Wuming's blow after blow, making muffled sounds again and again. Matthew's legs couldn't stop shaking, and his hands couldn't stop shaking, but Matthew didn't let the shield leave his hands. Drops of sweat slid down Matthew's cheeks and fell to the ground, but Matthew was still holding on. Wuming looked at Matthew with relief. Gadotzi was really lucky to have such a follower in Junior. Gradually, Wuming's sword swung faster and faster. Matthew, who could still rest between swings, gradually had no chance to catch his breath. Clank 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 clank. Gradually, the meteor silver in Wuming's hand turned into a silver-white sword light and bombarded Matthew's shield. If one looked closely, they would find that each sword light was enchanted with magic. This was an alternative version of magic discharge. Although Wuming didn't have this skill, because of Wuming's EX level infinite magic, Wuming could extract the magic from his body and enchant it on the meteor silver. This was another advantage of Wuming. Because Wuming was not dead and had a powerful identity, Wuming had the memory of his class. For example, Cuchulainn, as a caster, should only have knowledge about the Lune rune and not the spear art. However, his spear art was engraved in his bones, so even as a caster, Cuchulainn could still fight a few rounds with Wuming. Moreover, for example, Stheno and Euryale, the two of them didn't have corresponding classes at all. Because of the performance of their class, the two of them were given the ability of that class. For example, Wuming was now an assassin, so Jack the Ripper couldn't use magic. Therefore, Wuming couldn't use the magic in his mind. He could only inject magic into the runestone to detonate it. Similarly, Wuming couldn't use the Meteor Silver Noble Phantasm because Jack the Ripper didn't have any records of using the Meteor Silver Noble Phantasm. This was also the disadvantage of being a servant. It would fix the development direction of a certain class. Once a servant was summoned in a certain class, the most convenient weapon to use would be the weapon of that class. For example, if Euryale was an archer, she would have an extra bow in her hand and would have knowledge about bows and arrows. At this moment, Matthew was enduring the high-density slashes that were infused with magic. However, although Matthew looked like he couldn't hold on any longer, Matthew was still able to hold on. Matthew. Gadotsi, who had arrived at some point, looked at Matthew, who was struggling and couldn't bear to look at him. She then turned her head away. Don't turn your head away. Olga Marie stood beside Gadotsi and stared at Wuming and Matthew in the courtyard. She said to Gadotsi, "Did you forget what I told you? Watch them carefully." After Olga Marie finished speaking, Gadotsi seemed to have made up her mind. She clenched her fist and looked at Matthew, who was struggling to hold on. Wuming, of course, noticed Gadotsi and Olga Marie's arrival. Therefore, Wuming gave Matthew another dose of medicine. "What's wrong, Matthew? Can't you do it? Your master is watching you." Hearing Wuming's words, Matthew turned his head and looked to the side. Sure enough, Gadotsi was looking at Matthew intently. Matthew read something from Gadotsi's eyes. "Hold on, Matthew. I believe in you." Matthew read the sincere encouragement in Gadotsi's eyes. "If I were an enemy, then I would completely defeat you and kill your master." This sentence was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Wait a minute. Gadotsi carried the shield, struggled to follow Wuming, and left. Really, both of them are so troublesome. Olga Marie rubbed her forehead. How many things is he hiding from me? Then, Olga Marie began to think about Wuming's secrets. Exploring a man's secrets is the first step for a woman to fall. Suddenly, Cuchulainn materialized. None of your business. Olga Marie proudly stared at Cuchulainn. Although Cuchulainn was rejected, he didn't get angry or retreat. Then, Cuchulainn moved forward and stared at Olga Marie as if he saw something interesting. The talent of a magician is first class, but he doesn't have the talent to become a master. That's interesting. It's none of your business. Olga Marie angrily pushed away Olga Marie, who was staring at her. Cuchulainn, who was pushed away, didn't get angry. He smiled casually, and then began to talk about Wuming. By the way, my brother is really resourceful. He can even make a contract with someone who doesn't have the talent to become a master. Cuchulainn waved his hand and said casually. That. At this time, Olga Marie suddenly opened her mouth. Ha! Cuchulainn looked at Olga Marie in confusion. Are you close to assassin? Olga Marie asked with a slightly red face. It was a little embarrassing for a proud person to put down her attitude and ask someone else. Cuchulainn's eyes lit up. He had already guessed Olga Marie's thoughts. Not very close. After all, the first time we met was on the battlefield. But I heard a lot about my brother from my master. We also talk about him in our free time. After all, we are not mortal enemies. We fight all the time. If Wu Ming heard this, he would have hammered Cuculin's head. If Cuculin hadn't been serious, Wu Ming wouldn't have fought him to the death. Did you think that the spear of impaling death was so easy to receive? Besides, isn't there a saying that the one who knows you best is often your opponent? So, I know my brother quite well. Cuculin looked at Olga Marie and grinned. What, do you want to know my brother's privacy? Cuculin teased Olga Marie. Olga Marie's face turned red when she heard Cuculin's teasing. Ahem. After all, he is my follower. It is necessary for me to know my follower's story, isn't it? Olga Marie coughed and replied righteously. Isn't there a record in human history? In fact, the stories of our heroes are basically similar to what is recorded. Cuculin waved his hand. Instantly, Olga Marie looked at Cuculin with a "you're dead" look. First of all, I only know my brother's story in Ireland. Cuculin raised his hands in surrender. That's fine. Let's get started. Olga Marie thought for a moment. It was better than nothing, so she nodded. Then, Olga Marie came to the steps and sat down, waiting for Cuculin's story. Then, Cuculin looked in the direction of Wu Ming. After confirming that there was no Wu Ming around, he began to tell the story. His story is basically similar to what you know, but I have to tell you about him and Maeve. As if he thought of something, Cuculin smiled gloatingly. In the beginning, my brother was a traveler. However, he said that he was traveling around, but in fact, he just couldn't find his way. Cuculin laughed. You mean, he has no sense of direction? Olga Marie also wanted to laugh. Ah, yes, but he was a greenhorn. Now, he shouldn't have a sense of direction. Cuculin smiled and shook his head. After that, the first place he went was Connaught, and because he accidentally saved a damsel in distress, he was entangled by Maeve. Chapter 358. In the end, Maeve's father intervened in the battle, and my brother took the opportunity to leave. After that, I never saw him again. Cuculin, who had been leaning against the wall for a long time, stopped. The story was over. Maeve really didn't get married for Assassin. Olga Marie found it hard to imagine that Maeve, who was called a slut, would keep her virginity for a man. Yes, after all, Maeve was captured by Wu Ming as soon as she left home. Therefore, although Maeve seemed to be dissolute in the days after that, as far as I know, she has been keeping her chastity. Cuculin looked helpless. But even if senior brother were to follow Maeve, the war would still happen. There's no difference, Cuculin said in an open-minded tone. After all, Maeve was called a person with a bad character by my master. Cuculin waved his hand. Olga Marie, on the other hand, had a thoughtful look on her face as she held her chin with one hand. So that's how it is, anyway, don't get too involved with my senior. At this time, Cuculin's tone began to become serious. The iron rule of servants is that they can't interfere too much in this era. If the girl's heart is locked onto the servant, it won't be good for either of them. Cuculin was saying that they shouldn't rely on Wu Ming too much. Once the Holy Grail War is over, Wu Ming will leave here, and whether he can be summoned again is still a question. If it's just a one-sided love, it's okay, but if both of them have a deep sense of dependence on each other, it's really bad for both of them. It's like a common love between a god and a mortal, and in the end, it won't end well. Because not to mention the lifespan of the two, they're not on the same level. I'll think about it. After a moment of silence, Olga Marie answered. What a wonderful story just now. Suddenly, Wuming's ghostly voice came from behind Cuculin. Ah! Cuculin let out a strange cry and quickly distanced himself from us. However, a hand pulled Cuculin's collar. Yo, Senior, what a coincidence. Cuculin pretended to be fine. I didn't expect you to be able to tell stories. No wonder you're a caster, Cuculin. Wuming smiled and looked at Cuculin. It's okay. Cuculin smiled awkwardly. After all, no matter what, he was still talking about her behind her back, so it was a little awkward. Pay attention to the situation around you. Don't let the enemy's servants take advantage of you. Wuming let go of Cuculin after saying that. Understood. Cuculin waved his hand at us, and his spirit form disappeared. After Cuculin disappeared, Wuming looked at Olga Marie. At that moment Olga Marie had turned away, blushing. Didn't Cuculin say that it's not good to know too much about a man? Wuming didn't get angry, but said in a calm tone. What can I do? You're always so mysterious. It's right for me to want to know more about you. Olga Marie replied, not to be outdone, but her voice was a little weak. Olga Marie still didn't turn around, but from the way Olga Marie's ears turned red, her face must be as red as a monkey's but at that moment. However, the fate that we have formed together will not be broken. Wuming said inexplicably. Olga Marie looked at Wuming in confusion. Wuming smiled and continued. My mission is to save this world, and your mission is to solve this singularity, isn't it? Since our goals are the same, then we are companions. Companions will definitely be able to understand each other in the future, so there's no need to rush. Companions. Olga Marie carefully thought about Wuming's words. But you will leave after this, won't you? How can we understand each other then? Olga Marie looked at Wuming. Yes, it wasn't that Wuming didn't have a chance, it was that Olga Marie didn't have a chance. Olga Marie's words reminded Wuming of the fact that Olga Marie herself was a ghost. As if he had decided on something, Wuming walked behind Olga Marie, turned his back, and sat down next to Olga Marie. Ah! Olga Marie felt the warmth on Wuming's back and screamed. What, do you care? Wuming smiled without turning his head. Oh, no, I was just startled, said Olga Marie indifferently. Wuming shook his head helplessly. The once reliable director was now like a little girl. In that case, let's get to know each other first, my master. Wuming suggested in a light tone. Olga Marie was silent. Wuming didn't say anything either, just quietly waiting for Olga Marie to speak. You know, because of my identity, I've never had any friends since I was a child, and my only teacher died in an accident. Olga Marie spoke. Although it's not a good time to complain, we still think that Olga Marie didn't have any friends because she was arrogant. After that, I threw everything I had into magic. Fortunately, my talent was there, and I became a first-class magician, and the next head of the Animus family. Olga Marie leaned on Wuming's back and continued. 3 years ago, my father, one of the 12 monarchs of the clock tower, the monarch of the astrology department, died. Olga Marie was a little sad. I became the new monarch of the astrology department, and then, in order to inherit my father's will, I became the new director of Chaldea. But, you know, the world of magicians is cruel. Olga Marie's eyes were a little dim. The other magician families began to target me, the young monarch, and the people in the family began to gradually disapprove of me, and in Chaldea, I was very busy because of all kinds of things. Olga Marie painfully held her head, her body was a little stiff. Then, I met Leviticus. At this point, Wuming could feel that Olga Marie's stiff body relaxed. Whether it was the family's disdain, the other family's suppression, or the various troubles in Chaldea, as long as Lev was there, he could help me solve them. Olga Marie thought of the dead Lev and felt a little sad. When I knew Lev was dead, I felt like the whole world was collapsing. Saying this, Wu Ming felt Olga Marie's abnormality. Her body and heart were constantly shaking, like the straw on a camel's back. But, you are still the director of Chaldea, the monarch of the astrology department, Olga Marie asmurred Animus. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.